Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 9th Planning Commission meeting, and thank you so much, everybody, for being here tonight. I know it's a lovely evening. It's probably the only one we're going to have this week, I heard. And I appreciate your being here instead of being outdoors, because I'm sure that's probably all where we all would really like to be. But be that it may, thank you again for all being here. We appreciate it. So we have several items on the Planning Commission agenda tonight, but first I would like to ask for any public comments for items that are not on the agenda, and I think we have my friend Paul Edgar, who is wanting to speak. Paul? Just for the record, we're friends with a lot of people here. We know everybody in town just about, between all of us.
Thank you, Paul Edgar, Kenema. I've been reading a section of Oregon Revised Code, and it applies directly to Kenema, Oregon City. Section 358, or Chapter 358 on historic districts and what is historic, and there's definitions in there. And I would like to see the Planning Commission help in a understanding of whether what is a historic district? And they have a section in there under definitions under historic property. And in it, it says if the district is a National Register Historic District, Kenema is. And then it talks about the word property. And the difference like between that district and let's say a conservation district is significant. But in this case, it's really, what does historic mean? Historic property mean? Does it mean all of the streets? Does it mean all of the property? Because obviously in a conservation district, we're really most often talking about specific buildings or things. And so when we get into this definition, it's critical in our district as to what needs to go before the Historic Review Board and what doesn't, what is impacted. And so some of this can be considered subjective. And this is the reason why I'm asking the Planning Commission to weigh in on this to try to make some determinations as to really, is the streets, are the trees, the rocks, the topology that's out there more than just the buildings? Because when somebody's going in and making alterations, significant alterations in the district, that's something that is a National Register Historic District, and by definition applies, it goes to this historic property. What should we be doing? And it's something that is more than just some attorney here or somebody there. So let's have the city come back and the Planning Commission give us a little read and to see how this applies, because we have a lot of things that have been very subjectively looked at in Kenema. And it's a district dying of 1,000 cuts. And we hope that we would like to get greater clarity coming down from you guys as to what all is represented in a historic district via that code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina, do you have any comment about that?
I know we have quite a full agenda. If you don't mind, if she could do a couple of sentences, but we can.
I understand about the agenda, but again, we will get there.
So I don't have the ORS in front of me, but my understanding, we look at Title 1740, which is our historic overlay district, which identifies Kenema as an historic district, McLaughlin as a conservation district, and landmarks outside of either three entities we regulate along with the Bartlett Road, and so.
We're getting a tap on the window.
Yes. And so that's where we find our guidance. If Planning Commission would like additional feedback, I can provide additional information at the next meeting as it relates to the ORS.
That would be terrific. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okie doke. Is there anyone else that's in the audience that would like to speak on an item that is not currently on the agenda? I don't want to bypass anybody if you thought of something at the last minute and you do want to come forward. And our friend over in the corner, can you hear? Can you hear okay? Okay, I just want to make sure. So if you don't, just tap her or get my attention. We want to make sure you get everything. So no one else? Okay, super. All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul. We will get back to you on that. And she said it will be at the next meeting, so we'll look for you there as well. All right. We are moving on. We have tonight on our agenda, we have, we're good? Okay, just keep rolling. We have 2 public hearings, and one is a request for annexation and rezoning, and the second one is a code interpretation. And so we will get to it. He should be here. Oh, he's coming? Okay. Just want to make sure. So don't want to leave any of our friends out here. All right. So we will, before I get into the fun part, which I know you guys, everybody that knows the land use script by heart probably should just mouth along, but we will be keeping time tonight on everyone because we do have a number of people here. We do want to make sure that we get to everybody. We are truly interested and concerned about what you have to say, and we want to make sure that everybody has an adequate time to speak. So please be kind and be generous of everyone else who's going to come either before you or after you. And that we're going to also apply that to our applicants as well. So our trustee staff will have her finger on the button. All right, so we are going to open the public hearing on AN 17004, ZC 17005, Park Place annexation and rezoning of 92 acres. And this is a continued public hearing. And I believe there has been a request filed for a continuance, but we will take testimony tonight. So my favorite part of the meeting is we have a staff report for this application, which has been prepared and was made available 7 days prior to the public hearing. Staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each of the applicant's proposals, and staff has analyzed that criteria, which is contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in the state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. Damon, would you be so kind to point to the chart on the wall? Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. If you do change your mind and you want to speak, still give it to the staff and they'll get it to us, so even during the hearing. So we will, we want to make sure that you fill out your name and address on the card so we can notify you of the final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony by stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed to the applicable approval criteria, and if you believe other criteria applies in addition to that criteria that is addressed in the staff report, please identify and discuss that criteria and explain how and why you believe it applies to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each of the applications, and any written material received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in that record. Written material submitted during the public hearing must be presented to staff in order to be part of that record. And of course, if you have any PowerPoints, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, Facebook posts, Instagram, or anything else you want us to pay attention to that you're using in your oral testimony, please be sure to submit copies to the staff while the record is open, because if you don't, they will not be included as part of the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision in which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must be raised for consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both, without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to. The issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So we've already opened the public hearing, and I've read the file numbers. So now we will go to questions of the commission. Does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare. Have you all visited the site? And we'll start with my esteemed colleague to my left, Mr. Bob Mahoney.
I've visited the site. I have no conflict of interest, no ex parte contact of any kind.
I did not make a new visit. I have visited the site. No conflicts.
I have visited the site and I have no conflicts.
I visited the site fairly extensively during the concept planning process, and recently just drove up to the end of Livesey Road. Livesey Road. I can never remember the right.
Livesey's the Livesey family.
And just did a quick turnaround there and came back. And other than that, I've seen in the newspaper various editorials, but those are public, so I have no other contact or conflicts.
And I guess it comes down to me.
Well,
I'm so ex parte and I'm so biased that I have to recuse myself and leave the dais until after this hearing. But you'll be hearing from me out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. And I am extremely familiar with the site. I also did a site visit last week to the end of several of the streets in the subdivision that's adjacent, and I'm very familiar with Park Place. I did not, however, participate in the concept plan process. I have not spoken with anyone regarding the specifics of this application other than to answer a few questions in Fred Meyer about whether the hearing was going to be continued. And I let the people that I spoke with know that I could not really discuss anything with them other than that, but telling them that the hearing was going to be continued to a later date, but still open tonight I don't think was a conflict. So does anybody in the audience want to challenge anything that the commissioners, we commissioners have stated?
Seeing none, I believe you can open the hearing and take the staff report.
Okay. And I think I declared an ex parte at the last meeting, but if anybody has questions about that, I can answer that as well. Okay.
Thank you, Chair McGriff. Pete Walter, City Planner. This hearing is continued from February 12th. And tonight, we'll be revisiting some of the issues that were raised during public testimony. Staff is requesting a continuance of this public hearing, but we're going to be requesting a continuance to May 14th, not 2 weeks from now, but May 14th, because the applicant's attorney has a prior obligation. And with that, I'll go into this PowerPoint. It's a 92-acre annexation of land within our urban growth boundary. They are also requesting rezoning pursuant to our comprehensive plan. Currently, it's Clackamas County Future Urbanizable 10, which is a 10-acre district, and it includes land that is rural, farm, and forest 5-acre. The requested rezonings are to R10 single-family dwelling district, that's minimum 10,000 square foot lots, R5 dwelling districts with a minimum density of 5,000 square foot lots, and neighborhood commercial district, which would be the zoning along Livesey Road. Those designations, if approved, represent an initial step in realizing the North Village concept for the Park Place concept plan, which was adopted by the city in 2008. This is the subject site. You can see Livesey Road to the south and Holcomb Road to the north. The comprehensive plan designations are mixed-use corridor, medium-density residential, and low-density residential. This is the site topography. The areas that are the steepest are associated with drainages to the northwest of the annexation area, and along Livesey Road draining southward into Abernathy Creek. An aerial photograph of the site indicating current development and some fairly green areas. There's a large forested area on the northeast portion of the site and scattered trees throughout the remainder. The North Village neighborhood concept was part of the Park Place concept plan, and the annexation area is indicated in magenta here. So this concept would be mostly residential, but as you get closer to Livesey Road, we're starting to have a neighborhood commercial node, and that would be an area that is going to develop eventually as sort of a two-story neighborhood commercial zone, not a high density commercial area. So the light yellow area indicates the areas that are the lowest density, but you also have the areas closest to Livesey Road, and it creates more of a higher density as you get closer along Livesey Road. Part of the criteria that we review an application for in this case includes the Metro code for boundary changes, and these are listed here. They include requirements to observe any urban planning area agreements, any applicable standards for comprehensive plan, public facility plans, consistency with any regional framework plan, and that includes the Urban Growth Functional Management Plan, which we are part of the metro area. And we have to assure that the boundary change will promote the timely, orderly, and economic provision of public facilities and services. And we have to show consistency with state and local law. Our own Title 14 for annexation includes the following criteria listed here, and it has to be consistent with our comprehensive plan, and the Park Place concept plan is our comprehensive plan for this area. In order to annex the land, it needs to be contiguous to the city, and it must conform to all other requirements of our city ordinances, as well as be within our urban growth boundary. With respect to the zone change, these are the criteria listed here. They're similar in that you have to show timely, orderly, and adequacy of public facilities. That includes all public facilities, including water, sewer, storm drainage, transportation, schools, and emergency services, including parks as well. And those services and facilities have to be in place according to these criteria prior to issuing any certificate of occupancy. The service must be sufficient to support the range of uses and development allowed by the zone. Criterion C is the transportation system must be adequate to handle the additional traffic load that would be put on roads through this development, and we must address statewide planning goals if our comprehensive plan doesn't already address those. So we've recommended this is a summary of two of the conditions of approval, but principally we are recommending that the zoning for this area would not be effective until the city adopts alternative mobility standards or targets through amendments to Chapter 12.04 of our city code. And if annexed, no development may happen on site until the applicant submits a master plan for the entire property that addresses the Park Place concept plan and in more detail the city's public facilities plans, including parks and trails with respect to timing of parkland acquisition and development, and also importantly phasing of sewer, water, and stormwater services, and also ensuring that the transportation system is in place. And that includes a timely connection to Holly Lane, or from Redland Road, what's known as the Holly Lane extension. So in the initial staff report, we've listed several conditions of approval with respect to specific transportation system plan projects that are applicable to this area, and they're listed here. And condition the applicant to participate in these, in the proportional share for each of these projects at the time that a master plan is approved. So the master plan will serve as a vehicle for us to refine all of this. We also included a discussion of the island annexation issue because there are 3 properties that abut Holcomb Boulevard that would be created as a county island if this annexation moves forwards. So we have a comprehensive plan policy that requires that the city evaluate and avoid creating unincorporated islands within the city. The applicant has indicated that they tried unsuccessfully to include these properties in their annexation. And this policy provides that in some instances, the city may require that parcels that are adjacent to the proposed annexation be included. And the city attorney has also given an updated memorandum which they can summarize for you with respect to this. But this does mean that if the city were to force these 3 properties into the annexation, voter approval would be required because of one of the criteria for bypassing a voter of the people is 100% owner consent. And if we force those properties into the annexation, you would not have 100% voter consent. And that's one of the...
Just go ahead and summarize the...
Yeah. The 4 criteria to avoid a vote or not have to send your annexation to the vote is it has to be contiguous to your city. It has to be within the urban growth boundary. It's got to have a comprehensive plan designation, and you have to have 100% unanimous voter consent and otherwise comply with all city codes and ordinances. And all of those criteria would be met, except that we would like an interpretation of 14.4.3, the policy with respect to island annexations.
So it's my understanding that the city to date has not forced anyone to come into the city if they don't want to.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
The city has forced properties.
yeah, if you
Into
go
the
back
city.
in time.
Well, but I say generally we have not. And besides, I don't know if we really want to pay for the cost of the election, so that would be required. So anyway.
So moving on to the February 12th items, there were 10 issues that were raised, listed here. Park Place Concept Plan, and I'll go through these. Park Place Concept Plan, we wanted to reiterate that this is an adopted plan. It's adopted into the city's comprehensive plan. It was acknowledged by the Department of Land Conservation and Development in 2008. And it complies with Metro's Title 11, which is a requirement that cities do a concept plan for urbanization of the area prior to any annexation. It provides a state framework for the sustainable development of this area. It was adopted through an extensive public process, approximately 2.5 years. And all subsequent city master plans, sewer, water, stormwater, transportation since then have taken the Park Place Concept Plan into account. And subsequently, our system development charges that we collect from development take into account the urbanization of this area as well. The adoption of the Park Place Concept Plan was raised as an issue at the last meeting, but it cannot be revisited as part of this review. This indicates the areas of the urban growth boundary expansion and the history there. The area that is yellow, it was part of the 1979 urban growth boundary. The gray area is the 2002 expansion area, and you can see the annexation area includes both areas. So when we adopted the Park Place Concept Plan and made findings for compliance with Title 11, we did the concept plan for both the areas that were 1979 and 2002. As we mentioned, we have a condition of approval that requires master planning prior to development, and that's because this is a very large annexation area, and we want to be sure that we have adequate timing and phasing of the public facilities, and the master plan allows us to do that, so that the areas that are developed first will be connected to public facilities, and that we build public infrastructure in anticipation of the build out of the entire area so that there's good services, including transportation. And one of the main issues is the timing of the Holly Lane North extension to Redland Road, and that will be necessary for us to tackle that issue with a master plan. Subsequent subdivisions would be submitted as detailed development plans, and this is necessary to implement the Park Place concept plan. The reason for the other reason for the continuance was so that Lancaster Engineering could respond to comments of the Oregon Department of Transportation to review their trip generation analysis based on an updated reasonable worst-case scenario, and that was included an updated operational analysis for 16 study areas, and it responds to Clackamas County roadway standards. They also reassessed their capacity analysis and proposed a trip cap. And I'm going to request John Replinger briefly summarize his comments with respect to that addendum. John, you want to come up?
Okay, thank you. Chairman Griff, Commission members, you recall that when we talked in February, we had the issue about a reasonable worst case had been raised by the Oregon Department of Transportation for a transportation planning rule analysis. The applicant's obligated to analyze a reasonable worst case for the development. The Oregon Department of Transportation was particularly concerned about the assumptions that the applicant made with regard to the neighborhood commercial area, the 4.5 acres on the site. The applicant worked with me and an engineer from the Oregon Department of Transportation to come up with a different, more intense development of that neighborhood commercial than the applicant had originally analyzed. The applicant provided an addendum that was presented to you in your packet that used a worst case that had substantially more development from the commercial area than had originally been proposed in the analysis. The assumptions that the applicant made, I think, are reasonable. I think they should completely satisfy anybody's concerns about it being a reasonable worst case. And my comment letter that is dated March 29th that was included in your packet provides my analysis of the applicant's revisions on that commercial. Again, I guess I would point out that the development is reasonably consistent with the Park Place concept plan, is consistent with the transportation system plan. The additional analysis that the applicant provided additional justification for the...
Sorry, John, hang on just a quick second. You're not supposed to get timed out, so.
I know.
You're not on the timer.
Thank you. The analysis that the applicant provided showed this, and I wrote up the conditions of approval in my March 29th letter that provided for my recommendations for conditions of approval that the applicant participate in the funding in proportion to the amount of traffic that they were generating from their development, consistent with the projects that were included in the transportation system plan. So I don't think there are any surprises here in terms of the amount of traffic that's generated or the need for the projects in the TSP. As Pete has further described, the applicant will be required to do a master plan prior to any additional development. When the applicant comes forward with a master plan, it will likely include different phases of development, and there will be even more study of the particular intersections and the particular roadways that are included in the TSP and presented in preliminary form in this TPR analysis. So I'm confident that we have identified the appropriate things for the transportation planning rule, and I agree with the applicant's contention that what they have shown is compliance with the transportation planning rule. The master plan requirement that the staff has talked about will ensure that they come back with additional analysis that ties particular transportation improvements to different levels of development that occur when the applicant starts moving forward and developing this 92 acres. The one additional item that is in your packet this evening relates to addendum number 2 provided by the applicant's traffic engineer. And this provides additional information about the intersection of Anchor Way and Redland Road. Again, that's a project that is identified in the transportation system plan. We will be having a condition of approval in the final version that also requires the applicant participate in a proportional funding for that project. So that's a whole lot of information presented to you in short with a but I think I'm confident that what we've generated in terms of the conditions of approval for transportation are consistent with the TSP, consistent with the concept plan, and provide for a reasonable implementation of the project. And
Thank you, John.
I can answer questions now or later as the commission chooses.
Do mine later.
Yeah, we'll do it later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, I'll move on quickly. The other items in staff's addendum address comments we received from ODOT, which are supportive of the analysis that was done. They mentioned that the transportation impact analysis properly documents the significant congestion challenges and analysis needed and the necessary improvements to deal with that, including the Holly Lane extension. The staff report demonstrates compliance with the transportation planning rule, and they're supportive of the master plan requirement because it will ensure adequacy of infrastructure consistent with our transportation system plan. ODOT has jurisdiction over I-205, Oregon 213, and Oregon 99E, and the impacts associated with the zone change on those intersections. With respect to Clackamas County's comments, we got comments on April the 3rd and April the 6th. They have jurisdiction over Redland Road, Livesey Road, Holcomb Boulevard, a portion of it, and Holly Lane. They were satisfied with the applicant's traffic addendum with respect to the west end of Livesey Road not being impacted by the development of the annexation area. And they also asked for the additional analysis for Anchor Way and Redland Road, which we just received from the applicant today. The other issue was tree removal prior to annexation. Land brought into the urban growth boundary is analyzed for future urban use, including areas that are sensitive. Currently, the city doesn't have any codes or policies that restrict tree cutting prior to annexation for areas that are not within the city limit and inside the UGB. So those areas are under county or state jurisdiction. They do have overlay districts applied to them when they're in the county, including that protect streams, wetlands, and slopes. And when we did the Park Place concept plan, we identified the Goal 5 resources that would be protected in those areas, and that includes our stream areas, ravines, and areas that are subject to cultural and historic resources and that sort of thing. And we also have a slope overlay district that applies. When property is developed in the city and there are large trees still on the property, we require a analysis of or a tree plan for that area, and whether the property is commercial or residential, we require planting of new trees for any trees that are removed in accordance with our tree protection code. So that's a short summary of our current policy with respect to tree removal. And I know that people feel very strongly about this issue, but we cannot regulate something that we don't have a policy for at this time. We also heard about traffic safety and speeding, mostly related to Holcomb Boulevard, which is it is a concern for everybody involved. So speeding along those areas are It's a current problem, and it's an enforcement issue for our police department and for Clackamas Sheriff's Department. When a development is proposed, the traffic impact analysis includes crash data, identification of any safety issues and speed zones, and recommends any necessary improvements for those safety concerns, such as stop signs or signalization, anything else, speed zones and that sort of thing. And depending on whether you're in the county, on the county road, or in the city road, you can address our Clackamas County Traffic Safety Committee or the Oregon City Transportation Advisory Committee with concerns about these sorts of things. We also heard testimony about geologic hazards in this area, and we also received some detailed information from Paul Edgar with some data, and we wanted to make sure that we had that data in our database, and if we didn't, that we could direct the public to where that is. So in your packet this evening, I'm including into the record an email from Chris Dunlop, our GIS coordinator, that talks about the Dogami layers that are in our GIS and which are referenced in both our code and in our adopted map for the Geologic Hazard Overlay District. And so depending on what map series you're looking at, our code does include all of that data and information. When we adopted the overlay district, it made specific references to these maps and then created an overlay that buffers those areas based on whether they're a landslide area or a steep slope area. So if it's a landslide area, our review area is 200 feet from the toe or crest of any landslide, or 50 feet from any slope that's 25% or more. And in addition to that, any qualified geologic engineer can identify a continuation of something that is not mapped or which shows, based on initial investigations, that there may be a hazard. Then they can make recommendations above and beyond just the references that we require. We also had a request that Dr. Scott Burns come and talk to the Planning Commission, and we invited him to come and speak to us, and he agreed to come to a joint work session, which will be with the Planning Commission and Natural Resources Committee on March 14th.
So it happened 4 months or 2 months ago?
Oh, sorry, May 14th.
Well, we're going to go back in our time
May
machine.
14th.
Yay.
Say, I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so that'd be at 5:30 before our regular Planning Commission work session. It is a busy agenda, but we will deal with that. So we're excited to see Dr. Burns. With respect to cultural and historic resources, Christina did a search on the State Historic Sites webpage and database, and did identify some properties that are in and adjacent to the area that are listed, and which would be evaluated further with a master plan. Within the annexation area, there were some structures that were eligible for historic, not eligible for historic because of their age, and outside the annexation area, there are 4 eligible properties, and I've listed the addresses of those in the staff report.
Is there a way to make this bigger?
Not right now. I can't really zoom in.
Okay.
Really quick, Pete, since you got your mouse moving around on it.
Okay.
No, it
Yeah.
shows it. Can you do a rough of the
Yeah.
annexation area?
Yeah, okay, so here's Holcomb Boulevard, and here's the easternmost tax lot where it touches, and it comes down here.
That would have been nice to
And
have
then
on there, because that's what my question is.
up through that area, so. You want to speak to that?
I can do that.
Okay.
All right,
Those, the coal-fired resources.
so.
Christina's going to clarify this.
The city has identified all resources over 50 years old. We did it in 2011, so there may be a few. But the parcels in blue right here are outside of the annexation area.
There are 2 of the 3 islands.
Right. They they are identified as eligible. They are over 50 years old, and those survey forms are in the packet. I think those two are 1930s and 40s homes, if I remember correctly. And then the other two parcels down here, this is the historic landmark, which is in the county, is outside of the annexation area, just to the south. And then the parcel here, blue, is identified in our survey as over 50 years old and eligible. So the annexation parcel kind of comes down here and over. So this is to the west, and this property is to the south, and they're both outside.
Any way we can get Chris to do his magic with GIS and put the boundary on there?
No, we can have that available for the
Make
next.
this like a little bigger.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You should have seen how it came out on my printer. It was like magnifying glass.
Yeah, no, we can do that at the next one. Okay, almost finished here. We also heard some comments about the timing of infrastructure, and specifically the question, why can't infrastructure be put in place prior to development? One of the reasons is that it's extremely expensive, and we do have a requirement that the necessary infrastructure be in place before the first certificate of occupancy is there. But developers are required to pay for their fair share of improvements and system development charges, which are legally sufficient to show adequacy of public facilities. And they also have to dedicate sufficient land for needed facilities, including roads and parks. One of the reasons that we're requiring the master plan is to deal with the specific infrastructure needs, such as the parks and the road connection timing and that sort of thing. So that's the staff response to the 10 items that were raised at the February 12th hearing. We are requesting a continuance to May 14th in order for the transportation engineer, our city transportation engineer, to respond to the additional analysis prepared by the applicant for Anchor Way and Redland Road, although we do have the necessary conditions of approval drafted for these areas, and they're already identified in our transportation system plan as projects that the applicant would have to contribute with their development.
Pete, does that include, the analysis include cost of construction?
Not yet, no. That would be part of a master plan. So we do have estimates from the transportation system plan, which are based on the costs of those improvements in the TSP. And yeah, the applicant's proportional share of that project cost, yes. But then when it comes to actual subdivision, we'll be able to tighten up those numbers and that sort of thing.
Could you just briefly go over again, you mentioned the statement regarding all the improvements being in prior to a certificate of occupancy?
Mm-hmm. That is one of the zone change criteria, yeah. And a certificate of occupancy on a residence or a commercial property and that sort of thing. So basically that's ensuring that there wouldn't be that's the time of impact, is when a structure is occupied. So that's
So the improvements could be going in at the same time some construction is happening on a building or something?
They can be built, yeah, but it's not going to actually be occupied until either the proportional share cost is paid or the improvement is constructed. Mm-hmm.
Wait, back up. You just added another sentence to that.
Well, they either have to build the improvement that's directly abutting their property, which is what's required, or if the improvement is going to serve development that is beyond their particular development, they may be required to oversize that, and then they can be reimbursed in the future. And that's one of the other things that would come out of a master plan, is identification of any areas that are going to be oversized and subject to reimbursement, potentially. Yeah.
Well, if they do have to oversize it in terms of trunk lines and things like that, for water and sewer, the city also has to share in that cost, do they not?
Yeah, I think this is where we really need the engineers to chime in and say what when they do our system development charge analysis and our capital improvement programming, what percentage of these costs are eligible for reimbursement from system development charges if the developer builds the entire thing. So we'd have to look at which specific piece of infrastructure you're talking about.
Is there any analysis in terms of ultimate build-out of the 92 acres?
Well, the most recent analysis is the Park Place Concept Plan, which is 2008. But for this specific area, we would like to see the master plan do a more updated analysis of the build-out north of Redland Road, you know. So,
Well, I'm talking about timeline in terms
Yeah.
of 1, 2, 3, 5 years.
Yeah, well, that's what the master plan would tell us. And,
Okay.
yeah.
So what would you say the changes, so it's been 10 years since the master plan was adopted, so what would you say, just give me your best professional planning guess about what conditions have changed since then? I kind of have a couple in mind, but
On the ground or economically or socially or what?
all of the above.
I don't
The
know.
life, the universe, and everything.
Well, I think a lot has happened regionally since then. You know, we've seen a lot of growth in other cities as well, and just growth
In that
west side.
particular area.
Yeah, that's true. We've adopted concept plans for the South End area and the Beaver Creek Road area since the Park Place Concept Plan was adopted as well. And we've refined our public facilities master plans since then.
So honing it down to this particular area.
Not a great deal, in my opinion, other than the economy. I don't know. We haven't seen any development on the ground in this area because it's in a holding zone. And zoning, the proposed zoning would not be effective until we have adopted alternative mobility standards, and we would, as one of the recommended conditions, apply a condition that would prohibit any intensification of land uses on this area until the master plan is adopted and approved. Yeah.
I think just one of the things that I have observed in that time frame is, and I'm sure there are people probably here going to be testifying about it, is there's been an increase in the level of congestion in this particular area, particularly as it applies to 213 Redland and getting onto
Sure.
Abernathy. And I will say honestly that I judiciously avoid that
Yeah.
as a driver.
Right.
Because
And,
it's just not good.
Yeah, I mean, that's traffic that's both coming from Oregon City, but to a
Yes,
huge
and some
extent
beyond.
from the county as well.
Yeah, and I noticed that it got a little wonky since they started the construction on the water line over in Carver.
Yeah, and the need for an additional north-south collector area is part of the Park Place concept plan as well as the Beaver Creek Road concept plan, but it's going to take a long time for that connection to be ultimately realized because we can't control the pace of development or.
We also
the
can't
land in
control the
between.
land either,
Or
and
the
I don't
land.
really see we've been talking about trying to get another way down off the hilltop. And, you know, they're just not making any more land to try to get down from South End Road or anyplace else. So we have to wait for the flying cars, I think.
Right.
Thought we were doing a zip line.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that the zip line is the interim use that's going to happen before the flying cars.
So, any other additional questions?
Vern, got any questions? Bob?
Not at this time.
Paul?
Just one. Have you guys looked at the roads and sewers infrastructure? I know this question's been answered, but have you looked at having the first couple developers or first in to do most of it at least? Create an LID or not an LID, but maybe a zone of benefit or something like that, so that you don't have equipment going back and forth. This is probably out of our purview, but it just seems like it would make more sense to have all of that going in at least one big lump, if not all of it, as that, and I'm not sure exactly what the timing of this
Well,
development,
yeah, I
this
mean-
build out of this would be, but
One of the benefits to a larger annexation area is it has the potential to build a large piece of infrastructure
right.
and potentially have a domino effect for areas that come next. And
Yeah.
but specifically, have we talked with the developer about creating a reimbursement district or an LID? Not yet. It would be our
That is
hope that
something
we
we
can
would
broach
definitely
with a
strongly
master
consider.
plan. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
What about parks?
Again, that's something that the Parks Department right now has very little money to acquire new land. But, and we don't have a lot of, we don't have any specific language that requires dedication or as to the quantity or quality of park land and open space, other than relying on the concept plan, which is not. So the implementation mechanisms that we have are currently the subdivision code and the site plan and design review code. And the master plan is a discretionary land use decision tool that we can use to try to create more flexibility and agreement with the developer to get that parkland dedicated and built in a timely manner. But we need to get more input from the Parks Department as well. And the master plan would create that opportunity to do that.
Denise?
Okay, yes, go right ahead.
John, your turn.
Is there another memo from them?
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So in regards to the worst-case scenario that they have to engineer or do their transportation plan based on, I just want to be clear or make sure that I understand it. It's not, oh my God, there's been an earthquake or a landslide or flood. How do people get out of it? It's the MUC develops with some sort of business that needs 5 semi-trucks a day to go in and out, and the road system has to be able to handle a semi turning around and a semi going in and out of the property. I mean, just as an example, versus their initial plan, which was, it's going to be a plaid pantry and there'll be like the little beer truck that'll come up. It could be, ODOT said it could be something bigger, so you need to make sure that the transportation can handle that. Is that correct?
Okay, the analysis that the applicant did was to show compliance with the transportation planning rule, which focuses on whether the roadways that we have, the combination of arterials and collectors and all is sufficient and has been so appropriately designated. So that's the transportation planning rule. The next application, which the applicant will prepare, relates to the master plan. And we expect it to have phased development of projects. And that's where we have things like, okay, a section of Holly Lane has to be built before proceeding with X number of dwelling units or something like that. The third phase that we have in terms of the analysis is the site review. And that's the point at which we look at things like site distance from driveways, driveway spacing, the on-site circulation for semi-trailer trucks or whatever is directly proposed. So it's a sequential series of analyses becoming more and more refined, going from the very general development of 92 acres to the next phase, which is the analysis of the transportation system needs for the collectors and the local streets. And then the third phase is where we get down to the driveways. So that's the way we approach the analyses.
But the worst case scenario that ODOT's talking about is congestion or vehicle movement, not there's been an earthquake and the road's cut, and now there's no way out, in or out.
Correct.
Okay.
It is, it's the congestion aspect of
Okay.
it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's reasonable that there could be a landslide or the Cascadia could happen tomorrow. But I just want to make sure that it was that sort of worst
Yes.
case as opposed to,
Worst case from a traffic congestion and trip generation perspective.
yeah, because Livesey's been cut off before by flooding, so it's, but that's not part of the analysis. It's can semis get in and out? Can cars pass each other? That sort of stuff.
The Livesey will be considered a little bit more when we get to the master plan stage, and then Livesey will be considered again if there's going to be 4.5 acres at the corner of Livesey and whatever
Yeah.
for the community commercial that's specified in the Park Place concept plan.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're talking
Yep.
about.
Okay.
Sure.
John, can you talk to the trip caps?
Yeah, the trip cap is one that when the applicant comes forward with the master plan, they will need to stay beneath that trip cap with their development proposal. If they come back with an even more intense development that exceeds that trip cap, they'll be right back here trying to prove compliance with the transportation planning rule. It gets into the technical aspects and debate among the engineers and planners as to what is really a worst-case analysis scenario. Neighborhood commercial toward the fringes of the community, toward the fringes of the metro area, is not going to have the intensity of 4.5 acres in downtown Portland or even in downtown Oregon City. So the trip cap is a way of making sure that everybody from ODOT, DLCD, and the staff and the applicant are on the same page with regard to how intense is this development going to be. Okay.
That's good for now.
All right.
I think we all agree that when the big one comes, and we keep hearing about the big one,
Yep.
that nobody's going to be prepared. Hospitals are going to be overrun. Superhighways are going to be unsuper. But we're going to do the best we can. And my thought is on these emergency evacuations of neighborhoods, at what point now are we going to be taking a look at that so that we know that those people at least have a chance to get out?
I guess that my response as a civil engineer in that context is that the roads we are building today take more of that geological hazard and seismic hazard into account than the roads and the bridges that were designed and built 20 years ago or 50 years ago. So to the extent that we have new modern infrastructure going in place, I am confident that that is more likely to withstand and provide a reasonable service under emergency circumstances than what we have in place in many cases right now. I hope that helps.
In the area that's seismically been upgraded is the Oregon City Westland Bridge. The rest of it's going to go down. All right, are we ready to move on to the next step, folks?
Yep.
Gentlemen?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, John.
Okay, we are looking forward to thank everybody for their patience, and we look forward to hearing your testimony. I'm getting there. Don't try to anticipate what I'm going to say, because I don't even always know what I'm going to say.
Okay, fair enough.
Laura, are you ready with the clock?
I am.
So I'm going to call up Mike Robinson and Rick Givens. I think you get the award for the most appearances this last year at the Planning Commission. We're delighted to see you both again.
What's the prize?
I'll talk to you about it after the meeting. It'll be something yummy to eat. How about that?
Good evening, Chairman Griff, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Michael Robinson. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. My mailing address is 1211 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1900, Portland, Oregon, 97204. Also here tonight to answer your questions are Rick Gibbons. Rick is the urban planner for the applicant, and Todd Mobley. Todd's our transportation engineer. So we have 5 or 6 things we want to say to the Planning Commission tonight, and if you have questions, of course, please ask us. So first, we agree with the 3 staff reports, the February 5th staff report, April 6th staff report, and today's staff report. We also agree with Mr. Replinger's March 29th, 2018 transportation letter, and we agree with the recommended condition of approval contained in both the staff report and Mr. Replinger's letter. And the conditions, in our opinion, are feasible to be satisfied. Second, I thought it would be helpful to talk about the planning framework that this annexation, the concurrent annexation and zoning map amendment are part of. So if you'll allow me, I'll just describe it a little bit because I think it'll help inform the Planning Commission of how this relates to the things that have come before and how it relates to the applications that follow. So the first steps in urbanization property have happened. Property, as Pete pointed out, came into the urban growth boundary in 1979 and 2002. That allows urbanization. And this city adopted the Park Place concept plan in 2008. That's effectively your comprehensive plan for this area. And the Court of Appeals and the Land Use Board of Appeals have held that cities are bound by what those plans require. Even if the facts have changed since their adoption, the solution is to go back and amend those plans, but otherwise you're bound by whatever those facts are assumed in those plans. So the next step is this application, annexation and concurrent zoning. And as Pete pointed out to you, the criteria for the zoning map amendment include compliance with the comp plan, which in this case is effectively the Park Place concept plan. So once the property is annexed and the zone is in place, then you have, in this case, 2 other steps. You have a master plan, which consists of a very general plan and then detailed development plans for the individual phases, and the land divisions. That's the creation of the lots. And as Pete explained that, and I think he did a good job of explaining it, that's how you understand what the urban infrastructure is, where the parks are going to go, the open space, preservation of Goal 5 resources, construction of roads. And you get all that in a very conceptual and then more detailed description in the master plan, and then the land division applications implement those. What these applications before you don't do is proposed development tonight. We're not asking for any approval to actually put anything on the ground. That's the definition of development in Oregon law and in your code. We're simply setting the stage for development applications that will come after this if these applications are ultimately approved. And everything that's going to happen after this is a public process. So the Planning Commission has an opportunity to hear testimony on whether we've met our burden of proof for all those applications. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the main criteria that this Planning Commission has to decide in order to determine whether we've met our burden of proof. That's annexation, which I'll talk about first, and then the zoning map amendment. So for annexation, there's 2 things to keep in mind. First of all, the application contains the information required for the annexation narrative by Oregon City Municipal Code 1404-050-E7. If you look at that in your code, there's a number of things that we have to include in the written narrative, and Rick included all of that. You also have to address the criteria that Pete described earlier and the annexation factors in Oregon City Municipal Code 1404-060, and there are 6 of those, and I'll just note them very quickly. First, that there is or will be adequate access to the site. That's what the transportation analysis is about, and that's why the master plan assures that before any certificates of occupancy are issued, you're going to have the transportation plan in place to serve that phase or phases. And secondly, that it conforms to the comp plan. The evidence before you is that the annexation application does that. Third, that public facilities and services will be available to the site. The evidence in the form of comments from various agencies that provide those facilities is that, yes, they can be provided. And as Pete again pointed out, the applicant's going to be responsible for making those improvements. Fourth, that Oregon ORS Chapter 222 and Metro Code 3.09 are satisfied. 222 is the annexation chapter in state law, 309 is the boundary expansion provisions in Metro Code. And again, the evidence is that we've met those criteria. Fifth, that there be no significant adverse effects on resources, and the application narrative addresses that and makes that conclusion. And sixth, that there be a lack of significant adverse effects on economic, social, and physical environment of the community by the overall impact of the annexation. And the application explains why that's the case. But if you think about this, this is how you get new neighbors, new homes, new neighborhoods, kids that go to school, maybe in this case a few places to shop, and you generate revenue that the city relies upon to build not only these specific infrastructure improvements, but because they go into the system development charge funds, assist with the development of infrastructure throughout the city, sewer, water, and transportation, and parks. Fourth, we satisfy the zoning map approval criteria in 1760020. There's really 3 criteria for that. We're consistent with the plan, and in this case, the Park Place concept plan. Public facilities and services will be available with development, and the planned land uses are consistent with the transportation system. Our principal job was to look at the transportation planning rule, OAR 660-012-0060, which applies when you're amending zoning map
Can you
amendments.
say that again? I'm trying to write that one down.
It's OAR 660-012-0060, and it's, in this case, it's 1 through 3. And so that was the principal task that we had in working with the Department of Transportation. As a result of Todd's work, you have a letter dated April 2nd of this year from ODOT saying that the TPR, the administrative rule citation I just gave you, is satisfied. The city transportation engineer's March 29th letter said that he was satisfied with the applicant's analysis and the recommended conditions of approval, including a trip cap and a master plan, and he found that the TPR was satisfied. And then we have Clackamas County, which submitted 2 letters, I think one on last Monday or Tuesday and then one on Friday. They started out with a number of issues and ultimately end up asking for additional analysis on only one, the Anchor and Redland intersection. Because we got that on Friday, that's why Todd prepared an addendum and gave it to you today, and it's available for the public to review. But what your transportation engineer said about that single intersection was the fact that we didn't analyze it previously was not, quote, a serious deficiency, end quote, and because your acknowledged and adopted TSP already shows improvements at that intersection. But Todd did the initial analysis and frankly looked at your TSP and said it's already thought about how this intersection is going to be treated. Fifth, Chairman Griff, I wanted to talk about some of the issues that the public has testified to and hopefully answer some of the questions. First is schools. That's always an important issue for us. You have a letter from the school district, one from last year and again another from this year, saying that their planning has resulted in what they believe will be adequate facilities. And ORS 195-110 sub 13 says that local governments can't deny residential applications unless school district says facilities are inadequate. Now, this really isn't a residential application, but when we get to that stage, school district's comment will likely be the same, and that state law says unless the school district says that the facilities are inadequate, it can't be a basis for action on an application. Preservation of open space. The applicant understands it needs to comply with the concept plan, which requires parks and open space, plus the site is subject to the natural resource overlay zone in OCMC 1749, so that will require us again to preserve certain areas as we develop the property. In transportation, the evidence before you is substantial that we've satisfied the relevant approval criteria. We think John did a nice job of listing conditions of approval that make sense here, and we agree with those. We're comfortable with the master plan condition of approval. I think that gives the public and this commission more opportunity to evaluate how this large 92-acre area is going to be developed. And steep slopes are addressed by OCMC Chapter 1749, which is the city's geological hazard overlay zone. So let me talk, well, two other issues, and then I'll get to the conclusion. Tree cutting, it's not an approval criteria, and I think Pete did a nice and polite job of explaining why that's not relevant to your decision-making. We all understand why folks are concerned about cutting down trees, but if they're in the county and there's no prohibition, then there's not an issue and it's not a criterion here. And then island annexation. Here's what your policy, it's 14.4.3 in your comprehensive plan says, quote, evaluate and in some instances require that parcels adjacent to proposed annexations be included to, and in this case, it's avoid creating unincorporated islands within the city. So as Pete said, we weren't able to get everyone's consent to the annexation. There's 3 properties that are outside of the annexation area which create an island. But this policy doesn't prohibit islands. First of all, it's not mandatory. It doesn't say that islands shall be prohibited. Secondly, state law doesn't prohibit the creation of islands. And third, if you think about it, this is a policy provision that you and the city commission have to address on a case-by-case basis. If, as is the case here, the creation of an island doesn't prevent the delivery of services and facilities, then there's really no problem with having it. On the other hand, if you routinely and as a matter of course were to deny annexations because they created an island, you could have the potential of setting up a situation where you couldn't carry out your annexations, which are the way you incorporate these areas within your UGB. So we think in this case, the island annexation does not need to preclude or prevent the creation of the island. So Chair McGriff, we appreciate your time tonight. We hope these have answered your questions and some of those from the public. We ask that you recommend approval of the annexation and the zoning change to the City Commission. If you do choose to continue, we'd like you to continue to May 14th. And it's candidly not just my unavailability, it's everyone on the applicant's team's unavailability that night because we have to be at another hearing that's been scheduled for a while. So we thank you. If you have questions, please ask either me, Rick, or Todd. We'd be happy to answer them.
Laura, where are we on the time?
We have about 4.5 minutes left.
Okay, so I have about 2.5 minutes left according to my timer, but just want to coordinate that with you. Next.
I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, I don't have any questions, thank you. Gentlemen, do
Thank
any of
you.
you have any questions this time?
I have one, and
Is it a question for Todd or?
well, I'm not sure who it is, and even if it's a relevant thing, but it's a heck of a curiosity for me, and I haven't been able to put the two bits. But you have a 10-acre parcel with a valuation of $3,000 in your, where you
The
prove
assessor's information.
Yeah. I don't know. Which 10-acre parcel is that? And I'd love to buy it. I got $5,000. I'll buy it right now.
All I can tell you is that the assessors make decisions on valuation on a number of things. There may be an agricultural assessment on the property, I don't know. But certainly that doesn't represent real market value in today's market.
Yeah. That's because I was looking at that, I'm like, wow. But at this point, no, I don't have any.
There was it's a
substantive
technical question. So there was a list of properties to be included in the annexation and zone change in the applicant staff report. And it starts with no situs address, it's 9.69 acres, and then the bottom one says no situs address. So who owns that? There's no name attached to it, or names.
The names are provided on the petitions that are submitted and are part of the record.
Yeah, that was way down there, so I was looking for something a little, instead of sorting.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't figure out who was the.
Yeah,
Well,
they're in there somewhere, because it's all this is buried in the staff report. There's a in your staff report, there's a lot of stuff there.
But every piece of property has a person and an address associated with it.
that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I just couldn't match them up with all of that, so, okay, thanks. All right, thank you. All right. I'm gonna call most people up two at a time. And if you can, please make your statements and everything so we can all hear you. And please address the criteria. That is what is most helpful to the Planning Commission. We most certainly appreciate it when you do that. So I'm gonna call Kent Ziegler and Mike Erickson.
They were outside.
Doesn't matter who goes first, so you guys can arm wrestle for it.
You can go first.
So you've got 3 minutes. And we did say, please address the criteria. We'd love that.
Be my pleasure, Chair McGriff and fellow commissioners. And again, I'm here as president of the Oregon City Business Alliance. I'm speaking on their behalf on my comments. Just kind of following up from some of the statements I made at the original hearing that we had several weeks ago. We at the Oregon City Business Alliance, we have been promoting ourselves as supporters of economic development within the city and our local community. I've been very familiar with this property, as many of you may know, starting assembling, as I shared last time, back in 2002. Was very involved with the city in establishing what would be a secondary emergency vehicle transportation corridor from Redland Road to Holcomb Road. And I appreciate Damon's comments because we're all concerned about what would happen in case of a landslide or as we are familiar with Mr. Thomas's access off of Livesey Road was flooded when he had a heart attack, and his daughter had to drive him through 3 feet of water in order to get him to a hospital from where Livesey meets Redland Road. The importance of being able to have another secondary emergency vehicle access that would allow people that live in existing Oregon City subdivisions where Representative or Commissioner Guile lives and other people in the adjoining subdivision to be able to get to a public road without the fear of flooding or other physical ailments. That was always our criteria when Metro annexed the additional land in 2002.
You just confused me. Who's got the physical ailments? The road?
Mr. Thomas.
Not me.
No,
I'm not.
You just said try to get through something with physical ailments. You just totally lost me. So criteria. So let's stick to the criteria.
Right. Okay. Well, the main thing that I wanted to share is because I feel public safety is what we need to focus in on. And right now, if you look at the entrance, and I was reading this in Mr. Giles' article that came out in last week's Oregon City News, he mentioned that there's only one ingress and egress point into the Trailview and Wasco Acre subdivision. It's called Winston Drive. That serves 96 homes. And we at the Oregon City Business Alliance recognize that. We're also very concerned, just as he is, that there's only one access point. There are 3 stub roads that connect into that property, and they have temporary barricades set up right there. They don't end in cul-de-sacs, they don't end in turnarounds, and the reason why they have temporary barricades is because the city anticipates those roads going through. Without having those roads go through, you may be in violation right now of your own fire department's codes that you have dead-end streets that go beyond what is allowed. And that could cause some real issues if that one access point of Winston Drive off of Holcomb Road, for whatever reason, was to be blocked, and you had a tragedy of a death, you had a tragedy of a fire, houses burning down, and you didn't allow those other 3 access points to be opened up for public right away, not only for residents, but for emergency vehicles. So we at the Oregon City Business Alliance just feel it's important that you go ahead and recognize that those are temporary access points, that it is the intention of the city that those roads be extended, and that you go forward with approving this project, mostly from a public safety standpoint. And I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
One question. You're still left with the access of Winston Road up there, feeding even more.
No, that, for one reason or another, nobody shows the access that this 92 acres is proposing to do onto Holcomb Road. They're building their own construction and residential access. It's a brand new, full-blown road. In fact, no curb cuts will be allowed for driveways off of that road. It is treated as a people mover, almost like a mini collector. But nobody ever shows that. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, there's one piece of property that abuts up to Holcomb Road. It's at the perfect location because it's at the crest of the hill. So you have excellent site clearance looking down Holcomb Road and excellent site clearance looking up Holcomb Road. So that's why I bought that property years ago, was for that very reason. That is where the new access point comes in. It's not through the existing subdivisions. That never, ever was the intention. It's to build a brand new access road to serve this community.
More than just a residential street.
No, it'll be more than a residential street.
Now, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, unlike the subdivisions that have curb cuts for driveways, that road will not allow any curb cuts on it.
Just a quick question. So did the Oregon City Business Alliance vote on requesting that you come here, or?
Yes, it was approved by my board of directors.
Okay. We never really see anything in writing from you guys, so I'm just was curious because anybody could come in and say they were representing X, Y, and Z, and.
Well, I have my board meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have my agenda for my board meeting tomorrow, and I will make sure that we go ahead and provide you a letter.
That'd be great.
And speaking of the Business Alliance, just one small plug.
No, your time's up.
See, but
Business Alliance,
congratulations.
I know, your time's up, yes, that's the,
come to our forum in 2 weeks.
That's DACA. So,
Yeah.
Mike,
That's our speaker.
Thank you. It's a
Nice to
pleasure
see you.
to see you. Thank you, Chairwoman McGriff and Commissioners. My name is Mike Erickson, and the reason I'm here tonight is something not with Kent, but I'm actually one of the property owners up here. I bought some of this property about 8 years ago, and I'm looking forward to eventually developing this and doing something with the property. So my brother lives on the property now. We have the property on Holcomb that connects the whole thing. So I bought that probably 7 years ago. My brother lives there. And I also own the 10 acres with all the woods there. So I bought that maybe 9 years ago or whatever it was. And so I've been sitting on those properties for a long time, and it's just, I'm excited about the opportunity to put it into the master plan and be a part of Oregon City. So I just hope that you guys will approve this. You know, it's something I haven't just done recently, but I've been a property owner there for a long time. I know the property real well. And so I'm hoping and wishing you guys would vote in favor of it. So that'd be my request as a citizen and home property owner. So
Well,
any questions?
you know how we feel about trees.
We all do.
Well, I'm just saying, we all feel that way.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
So thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Mr. Thomas, nice to see you again. Again, we want to make sure you can hear everything, so come on up.
Doing good so far.
Good, great. I'm so happy to hear that.
That's one man's opinion.
I come unplugged once in a while, but I'd like to, you want my name and everything?
Oh, sure.
Okay, here I go.
And just pull that thing down a little more, the microphone in front of you. Yeah, there you go. So it's right even. Great.
Okay. Yeah, my name's George Thomas, and I live on Livesey Road at 16644 on Livesey. I've been there this will be my 48th year there. I want to kind of address a few things, if I may, on that road of all the years I've been there. There was a gentleman concerned about mudslides on this here on the last meeting. And I wanted to point out the fact that I've been flooded in there and flooded out 6 to 8 days at a time. And to put that much water down there, 8 to 12 foot, and Livesey in Redland, that put a lot of water on that area that's going to be developed. And during all that time, there'd been snowstorms. Well, not so much storm, but we had snow. But 2008 was, I think, was the deepest one of 2.5 feet of snow. And then 10 or 12 days later, it started raining and never stopped for several days. And I don't know if you ever seen standing water on the hillside, but it was there. And I want to point out to this gentleman that no mudslides in the 48 years I've been there. Now, on Livesey Road, it's a dangerous road, and it's dead end. And you go to the end of it, and you go up Frank's Lane. There are 4 residents on there, and a lot of vegetation below in hayfields, blackberries, overgrown some buildings. I always worry in the hot summertime if there's ever a fire, we couldn't get out, we'd get roasted. So now we go back down Livesey Road, coming up on the north side of Livesey Road. There are several houses on that side that's real close to the road, about 12 to 15 feet from the pavement. And then behind those houses is about 10 to 15 feet, at most, some closer than that. And the embankment goes down straight for about 50 to 60 feet into a live stream. Right now it looks like a lake down there, but all the raw sewage from these homes is dumping into that creek and going into Abernathy, into the Willamette. Now, we'll go back up to the end of Livesey Road, and there's a lot of people, about 67 homes, I think, and depend on safety and quality for their home, for their family and protection. And Livesey Road does not match any of the fire codes, like D101 or D102. At the end of a dead-end road, there has to be a 96-foot circle for them to be able to make a turn, or a Y type with 60 feet on each side, 20 to 26 feet wide. Now, Livesey Road doesn't qualify for any of that because she's only 17 feet wide. She's 3 foot short. That'd be illegal.
Mr. Thomas, I just want to let you know that the red light is on.
Oh, I didn't. Sorry about that.
Yep, that's okay. That means your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, no more time?
Well, you can wrap it up.
Okay, actually, under all of the things that on Livesey Road, I'd like to ask the commission if they would annex this in an emergency annexation.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't know if you remember, but the couple of the floods in the 90s, I was over near your house.
Oh, really?
Yes, as a city staff person.
Well, you know what it's all about then.
Oh, yeah, I had my high boots on that day.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thomas.
You're welcome.
All righty. Paul Edgar and Christine Kaczynski.
This Mike? You're Mike Harrison?
I'd like to defer. Christine, you go first.
Yep, those chairs don't have any wheels on them, I'm sorry.
They don't. Wheels are a problem, though. Christine Kaczynski, I live in unincorporated Clackamas County. I do not have a handout tonight, but I have 3 concerns and a question. My first concern is you've already taken care of it, and for the rest of my life, I'm going to be forever grateful for you inviting Scott Burns. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Pete.
My second concern is, I know I've given you much information and research on the landslide issue up here. There are 34 landslides. Many of them are only 10 to 15% slopes. The city is only regulating 25% slopes or more. I've done extensive research on the landslide insurance issue, and it appears that across the entire United States, landslide insurance does not exist. So, of course, one of the biggest concerns in my mind is that people are purchasing homes of about $500,000. And what is going to happen if something strikes one of these people, a landslide from an earthquake, or we have a bad flood, and then they find out then, oops, I don't have insurance. How am I ever going to pay for this? And I can tell you that rebuilding anything from a landslide is catastrophic. 90% of the people walk away from their mortgages. And lastly, in my last testimony, I ask you to do a geological study before you approve annexation. And I gave you reasons why, and I also gave you information from Professor Bill Burns as to what kind of studies would be done. This area, the soils are poor. The Park Place annexation boundaries are in Troutdale Formation. The Elder Crest landslides in Kelso, Washington, that took down an entire community. The landslides in Oso, Washington were Troutdale formations, and so is this. That's why I'm so concerned that this should be studied before you say, okay, because maybe there's more to this than you realize. Thank you.
Chair McGriff and Commission. Paul Edgar, Oregon City, Kanema. One of my big concerns here is transportation. I've had years and years and years involved, must say decades of studying and being involved in trying to understand it, but the trip generation in a remote site like this is going to exceed the average. So you could be looking at between 11 to 13 trips per residential unit here. I would like for you guys to keep an open mind about keeping on top of evaluating this stuff on a regular basis, because our trips that have been trip generation in this area has been going up rapidly from in some cases double digits annually, compounded. And what we need to be cognizant of is how do we get all of the infrastructure in place in time? And this is where we get into this section that Pete has been talking about in phasing. To me, I think that you really need to make sure that the main thoroughfares that connect all the way down to Holly Lane and that intersection and all of that all the way up to the top, is in place, right up front. We can't delay, we've got to have all of that, the main thoroughfares all put into place and know that it's there, and now they can build out from it. The spine, that's got to be done. If without a spine where I can filter off the stuff, Holcomb is going to be it's in trouble right now. You know it's in trouble. We all know it's not safe. We can't allow it to become worse and it degrades safety. And so it would be my hope that you guys would really look strong and hard at this and really keep on evaluating. There's got to be looking at this every year. We've got to stay ahead of it because if we don't have this infrastructure in place when it happens, it's too late. Sometimes it's 5 years, 10 years before we play catch up, and then that's total catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Paul. Fred and Wendy Blanchard? I just presumed you wanted to come together, so.
Yes, we are husband and wife.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
You first.
Hi, I'm Fred Blanchard, and my wife Wendy. Well, what we're wondering about is the concerns of the existing homes and existing families that live there, and what harm and misery this might inflict upon them. Our home is right at the epicenter of one of these upheavals. We live at the corner of Redland Road and Holly Lane. And we're not in a financial position to look for a new home. I don't have the good job I had when I bought my home. I'm 70 years old. I'm working full-time. My wife works full-time. We're not on any kind of public assistance, never have been. We're paying our bills on time, but we have to juggle our savings and our checking back and forth. At the end of the month, we maybe have $50, $75 ahead in our savings account. And our checking account is about the same. So we're just barely hanging on. We cannot look for a new home. And is our home going to be confiscated? That's what I'm wondering.
Confiscated?
Well, I mean.
Right. Is our home going to be taken to build this roundabout or road widening or whatever?
We don't know. Are you looking up their
What is going to happen?
place there, Pete?
Where's your property located?
14420 Redland Road, the southeast corner of Holly Lane and Redland Road.
Between Holly, we're in the corner from Redland and Holly Lane, right there.
First of all, that is not under city jurisdiction at this time. So
Right.
it's not part of the annexation proposal. And if the city does acquire land, it has to pay fair market value for it, and it's through negotiation with the property owner. Normally, in this situation, the developer would buy the land well in advance of development, and then they construct the roads on their property. They don't, it's not part of this plan is not to confiscate property in order to get necessary transportation connections. That's not part of this.
But if we decide to don't go, and stay there, they're going to obligate us to go anyway.
That's not,
No, that's
I
not
would
what
not
happened.
make that
Well,
assumption.
I wouldn't make that
Okay.
assumption either.
Good.
No.
I'm glad, because we cannot afford a house, because probably we're going to build houses for 500, and a house didn't cost that much, and we can't afford another house.
Sure, I understand.
I hope
Yeah.
that you understand that.
If you have other questions about this, I can happily put you in contact with our public works staff and city engineer, and they can explain to you the normal process for how we do road improvements. But that area is a very long way off in terms of
Okay, we just want to make sure
the
what is going to come.
And it's going to be something where it would be negotiated well in advance of any improvement, and so.
Yeah. Well, we would like to have, I know this is gone.
That's okay, no, it's okay, you're fine, we're answering your
To
questions. So I would-
have, of course, I know that they're going to build something around where the cars can go around like that.
So I would get Pete's card so you can stay in touch with him.
Okay.
And he said that he would have you meet with our Public Works Department.
Okay.
And maybe would be, Pete, you might want to be there too.
I
just to-
really appreciate it. Thank
So-
you very much.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll see what we can do to help facilitate that conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
don't lose sleep over it, though. We're
No.
talking 10-plus years in the future, I think.
I-
Unless something really phenomenal happens. But then you'll get the money for it because it'll be phenomenal.
All right, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, make sure you get Pete's card before you leave.
Okay.
Okay, I think I might mess this up, but is it Frank Planton or Planton? Planton, A-N?
Thank you.
Okay, Troy? Troy, hi Troy, come on up.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's living the dream.
Good to hear you. Thanks for having me, Sharon.
Yeah, and Ryan, come on up, Ryan Reynolds. I mean Richard, sorry, it's got Reynolds on the mind. So you guys can decide who wants to go first.
Age before beauty. Go. Okay.
I'll put you on the spot, sorry about that.
So
your name?
My name, Troy Lavoie. I live on 15114 Oyer Drive. It's crossed Holcomb there. I heard the commissioner, the chairman, say that she avoids the bottom of Holcomb and Redland down there.
Oh, for sure.
And I heard you say that you put in a zip line. I appreciate the levity. But with all these houses, you know where those guys are gonna drain out to go to work, right? They're gonna go to 213 in Redland. Doesn't matter which direction you go. Now, currently, you guys have approved at the airport, about 100 houses? And the Ceres property, 128, 130, something like that? Now, one of the attorneys said that that's 5 trips per house. 5 trips per house is 2 miles of traffic in the morning. You guys want to come down and take a little drive in the morning? 7:30. Come down Holcomb, get out to I-205, see how long that takes you. I've heard an engineer here. I happen to do a little engineering myself. I didn't hear a single number come for that guy. Not a single one. I've heard the planning say, oh, we meet the requirements. Well, that's nice, but with all those houses and the other houses, at 5 trips, that's 26 miles of traffic. You know, it's only 21 to downtown Portland on a bike. So that's what I wanted to point out. I appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen.
So let me qualify my statement. I do have several friends who live up, one that lives up on Sandalwood. I have other friends who live on Holcomb, other friends who live on Forsyth. I just go off peak if I'm gonna see them. I don't go during peak because exactly what you said.
That's nice, but I live there. I
know.
have to go to work in the morning.
I know. I'm just saying that for personally, I do go there, but I don't.
I understand that you have seen it, so I appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah, it's not pretty.
All right, my name's Ryan Richards. I live on Pittock Place. I'm also a member of the Park Place Neighborhood Association. And I was going to read a letter that Steve Vanderbeek wrote, but he's not able to be here, so.
Just for the record, he is.
He is also a member of.
He lives in Park Place.
I know, but it
Park
is,
Place.
he could be somebody who lives in Washington DC. Just wanted to get it on the record.
Not that guy.
And he says, I've been involved in support of the Park Place concept plan since its initial development. I've thought that it would be a wonderful addition to the community, and while I still support the plan, I have some concerns regarding the current annexation and its development. The current annexation being at the upper end of the concept
plan area will require storm, water, and sewage lines to be built outside the boundaries of Oregon City, including in this annexation. While roadways are not permitted to be built to support new development in this manner, I'm not sure whether storm and sewer pipes may be. Another issue is water. As put forward on page 9 of the applicant's submittal, the majority of this, and this is a quote, the majority of the site will be served by the City of Oregon City. There's an existing 16-inch City of Oregon City water main at Holcomb along the subject's property frontage on the street. A 4-inch water line is located on Livesay at the lower end of the subject's property. There will be a requirement to construct a 12-inch water main in the future collector of Holcomb to Livesay. Together with a pressure reducing station and the cost of removing the existing water pump station on Livesay Road. At the present time, the additional cost of these improvements are not included in the city's capital improvement program. The application will be seeking to have a CIP amendment prior to the development to include these regional costs. That's the end of the quote. This paragraph intends to indicate the developer is seeking this to ask the city to cover the cost of the improvement through the capital improvement plan. My understanding is that all these costs are inherent to the development of the new subdivision are the responsibility of the developer and should be part of their cost.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Do you have a copy of that for staff? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Troy. Jackie Hammond-Williams and Lisa Novak.
Presents.
Good evening, Chair McGriff and Commissioners. My name is Lisa Novak, and I reside in the Park Place neighborhood. I am here to respectfully request you to please consider the impact on road safety with the proposed Park Place annexation, and specifically on Holcomb Boulevard. This is a 2-lane stretch with a speed limit of 40 miles per hour and no traffic calming or pedestrian safety measures. The configuration and topography of the boulevard is such that speeding is passively encouraged. Vehicles are barreling down the hill from the direction of Bradley Road, and the 40-mile-per-hour speed limit is not followed. From the opposite direction, vehicles coming up the hill from the west, from the direction of 213, accelerate to climb the hill. I've witnessed distracted driving and a fair amount of road rage along the boulevard. In fact, during the week of March 26th, a multi-vehicle accident occurred at the intersection of Front and Holcomb. Studies show a pedestrian struck at 40 miles per hour has an 85% chance of dying. The reaction and stopping distance at 40 miles per hour is 266 feet, which is about 16 car lengths. The pedestrian dilemma is that it's difficult to know when approaching motorists are going to honor the pedestrian right-of-way. It's difficult for me to imagine a child being able to estimate a safe crossing. Simply waiting for a break in traffic is often unreasonable and could leave a person standing for a long time on the sidewalk. Add to this mix someone with poor eyesight, someone trying to take care of children while crossing the street, someone who walks slowly or uses a wheelchair. Waiting for a break in traffic is not a solution. Considering the layout of Holcomb Boulevard, the park and schools are on the north side of the neighborhood, while the mailboxes and several residential developments are on the south side. Just a few short sidewalks exist on this south side of Holcomb, forcing pedestrians and cyclists to use the bike lane, which has varying widths. There are no crosswalks at the intersections with residential streets, with several blind turns along the route. meaning anyone that needs to go to their mailbox is forced to cross Holcomb Boulevard. Help me understand why the Holcomb Pedestrian Concept Plan of 2004 wasn't fully implemented. It's on the city's website. I can appreciate budget constraints, but Holcomb Boulevard was recognized in 2004 as a minor arterial that required traffic calming measures. In the past 14 years, the neighborhood has grown even more. There are hundreds of homes that are currently in the works, not including the annexation. And further developments are in the works, and we still have no traffic calming measures. Is our aim to be a city of auto-centric residential developments where people are trapped in their neighborhoods, discouraging community and walkability? Help me understand why safety measures or any traffic calming measures are not being even implemented or even being tested. We go to enormous expense and risk to human life to save ourselves small increments of driving time. When you can't let your kids play in the yard, let alone ride their bike to the store, because you know the street is dangerous, then those who design the roads are not providing society any real value. The applicant's own traffic engineer stated that the development will increase traffic volume anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 daily trips, thus intensifying the dangers on Holcomb Boulevard. The risks are high, and I believe we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that document in our record for this?
The traffic analysis?
No, the one that she
testimony.
pointed out.
Sidewalk.
Not yet. Oh, that document, no. No, that's an adopted plan, but it's not in the record.
Yeah. We can add
Should
to
it?
it.
We can
Should it?
certainly add it in.
Should it be in the record? Should it be part of the analysis?
Would you like to add that?
Would you like to add that to the record?
Can have it. Okay.
So I presume it was not used in any way to analyze anything or to comment about it?
The
That we're
study
aware of.
area for this?
Probably not,
Probably
because
not.
We should look at that.
where the annexation joins Holcomb is outside of
Right, right.
the distant,
I'll check.
because I remember when it came.
Okay, well, thanks. We'll have that in the record then. Jackie, thank you so much.
Good evening, Chair McGriff and Commissioners. I have submitted some written testimony, but for the essence of time, I'm going to cut out some of what I was going to say tonight, and I'm going to kind of cut to the chase. I was also part of that sidewalk concept plan as I was part of the Park Place concept plan, so I'm very familiar with it. My name is Jackie Hammond-Williams. I'm a resident of Park Place for the last 28 years, and I live on Holcomb Boulevard. So I wanted to address the city's municipal code, particularly the section that says that the commission shall consider the following: lack of any significant adverse effects upon the economic, social, and physical environment of the community by the overall impact of the annexation. And I would suggest, and I think I'm right when Mr. Replinger said in his review of the traffic impact study, I think it was 1,200 daily trips. There's a lot of numbers being bandied around. I might be wrong. It's probably more. 533 homes potential to be built in this annexed part of Oregon City are definitely going to contribute to a lot of trips on Holcomb Boulevard. And also I heard that Chair McGriff asked Mr. Walters, you know, what has changed since the Park Place concept plan was adopted in this neighborhood? Well, I can tell you, since moving here in 1990, I've seen a huge increase in homes. That's good. We need homes. We need infill to create density. Our neighborhood has had, since the Park Place concept plan, the following developments built: Jennifer Estates, Barlow Crest, Holcomb Ridge, Trails View, the Ames Holcomb School development, plus a multitude of infill smaller developments. And that's great. We're building out the city, we're creating more density, we're giving people homes. I get it, I approve. Currently, we have the airstrip development of another 98 homes being built, and the Sears annexation, which will provide another 127 homes. Next year, the county will begin moving people out of the upper projects. That's in kind of the just slightly south or down the hill from the school. It's a big area, it's 23 acres, it's zoned high density. That's going to be built out with apartments and condos. It's a high density zoning. I can't imagine they're going to ask for a variance and want to go back to R8s. So that's going to produce a lot of traffic. All these developments, taken little by little when they're looked at, they get the green light. You know, it's okay, we've done the traffic study. But lump all those together and see how us, who are so passionate about our neighborhood, how our lives have been impacted. And given this annexation, it should have a connecting road, north to south, from Holcomb down to Redland. I would propose, if you deem it sensible to even bring this piece of land into the city, that road be deemed crucial for the development, for the master plan to go ahead. It has to be built. You cannot, I mean, Mr. Ziegler pointed to a piece of land that would have an access road. So you're telling me all this traffic is a bottleneck, is going to be pouring out and onto Holcomb? I'm glad that you've been to see Holcomb. It's a very constrained road. It's dangerous to walk. I walk it every day. I try and cross it. I mean, it ends right at the bottom with a really steep, dangerous curve. I'm sure you're familiar with it, going down onto Abernathy. So, you know, I implore you to get out and visit the neighborhood again and keep visiting it. This is a neighborhood that, A, has already been so built out and will continue to be for years. It's constrained by the access of just one two-lane street with a steep and dangerous curve at the bottom. It's surrounded by failing or near-failing intersections in the neighboring street networks. And I'm looking at the 2035, projection. These are all going to fail. Please realize that to annex this big swath of land for development without first requiring the Holly Lane extension mandated by the Park Place concept plan be completed, it will produce tremendous neighborhood traffic impacts that will severely impact the livability of Park Place neighborhood.
Thank you. So I'm going to just clarify what you have just said is that I believe you were saying is that it is your contention that none of the developments that you have listed in your statement have looked at the cumulative effect of all of this traffic.
Exactly. Over the years, we have just brought in more and more and more development, and we've only looked at each little development's impact without the cumulative. And this is you're trying to insert a huge village into an already constrained neighborhood.
Well, for the record, the Planning Commission has been concerned about that the traffic analysis we get do not look at the cumulative effect of everything else. So I think you're saying something that we've been discussing for years and grappling with, and we have no answers at this point.
But we're looking at them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tony and Jim Weber. Thank you so much for being patient.
Thank you.
Is anybody else warm in this room, or is it just us? Because we're under the hot lights.
I'm fine.
I knew you were going to say that. Just checking.
Jim Weber. Really appreciate the complexity of what I've observed here tonight, and I can see that there's a lot of thinking that goes into these things. I've only been in the Oregon City area for a couple of years now. You mentioned some historical sites. I'm from Portland. I've always thought of Oregon City as a whole as a historical site. And I never really spent much time there, but always thought growing up in Portland that Oregon City was kind of like a monument in itself. And now I see that from these testimonies that and it's getting more like San Francisco concept of congestion and disarray. And obviously in the planning of I-84 and 205, the planners didn't take into consideration the future the way they should. And we can think about that every time we're trying to drive in one way or another in rush hours, how confining those lanes are in comparison to what they could have been if they would have thought more of the future growth and population expansion. In saying that, Pete Walters cleared up a question for me when he was addressing these fine people here on Holly Lane and Redland Road, and he mentioned, well, this is a long ways off. Well, if it's a long ways off, my concerns probably are not my concerns, because I would be dead if it's that long off. But I live on Holly Lane, just up the road from where they do, and someone came by and they had mentioned to me that they were going to be putting a road through our property. And that obviously concerned me. I have 6.2 acres there that I purchased here a couple years ago. And there's a historical railroad track that is there, and Metro has an easement on that through my property. And you have some wetlands and some deep areas there, ravines there, and I would hope whoever the planners are would use a little common sense and maybe come out and talk to someone like myself, and to where I could say, hey, look, rather than to put the road through the railroad, historical railroad there, and cut off my access to the other part of my property and landlock that, and cut off Metro's access to their properties, just move it over a little bit, and then you don't have to take out all those old growth trees. Not to say anything to you about the spotted owls I've seen over there, but anyway, and the red-tailed hawks. We won't go into that. But essentially, if you just use some common sense and moved it over a little bit to the left, you wouldn't have to deal with those wetlands and those cliffs and everything like that. And I would suggest that you do that. Those are basically my concerns, other than as a citizen, the concerns that I've seen and heard here today about the congestion and the impact in the future that I think that we all should be concerned with. Go ahead. This is my wife, Tony.
Hi, Tony. Hi, thank you. This is regarding a continuance?
Yes, a
And I'm
continuance.
glad that it is going to go on before a final vote. Because I don't have, this is the first meeting that I've been able to attend, and it's quite complicated, and even viewing some of the slides, I can't tell where Holly Lane is. And I would like someone to help explain this to me. And also about, it seems that they're going to buy eventually some of our property and place us right on the road, real close. And I'd like to know the same as the other family about the financial impact that it will have, and also the livability for our place.
Yeah, I think what we'd like to do, since the question comes up a lot, is include some information in the record about how this process typically plays out, and get the input from our Public Works Department and put that in the record and for the public at the next meeting. So in the meantime, I'll give you my card.
I would like to add this one thing. I was at the Redland Cafe today, and they told me that they're building 400 houses out there that they've got scheduled to build out there.
Not
Well,
yet.
I would presume, pardon me?
Not yet.
Okay, well, if in fact they do, those houses are probably going to want to head towards 205 down Redland Road, right in front of their house. And that whole area, if that is the case, that road's got to be widened. Holly Lane's got to be widened. All of these things are going to have to occur. And I was just kind of curious about what kind of a time frame we're looking at. We're looking at the next 2 years? Are we looking at the next 5 or 10 or 20 years? My neighbor that is next to me told me when I brought this up, she's selling her house, and I said, you know, they're putting a road right through your property. Oh, they've been saying that for 20 years. That's never going to happen. Well, if it's never going to happen, I don't have a worry in the world, and neither do you. But the point being, is it going to happen, and is it going to, are you guys kind of think it's going to happen in the next few years, or maybe the next 20.
Well, one of the reasons that we're recommending a master plan is so that we know what phases this is going to occur in. And we don't know yet as
So
staff.
that'll tell about
Yeah.
that time frame. Now, can you tell me about the time frame of the master plan?
Right.
Is that going to come out within the next 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? How long are we looking at that to be in
It's really hard to
something we
say.
can look at?
I mean, it's dependent on market conditions and what the owners want to do. Largely,
What owners?
the property owners want to do with their property.
So you're going to
Yeah.
come and talk to us before you actually rubber stamp the master plan?
We don't drive this process, the developers do. So what we do is try to plan for that eventual development within our urban growth boundaries. When we adopted the Park Place concept plan, we made some best guesses about when the build-out might occur. And
what are those?
Chair, if I can interrupt for just a second,
This is
this
public
is an
comment.
opportunity to provide testimony, and
We understand
while these are
that.
certainly great
He's
questions.
offered his card, so I think we'll leave it at that, and then they can talk to him offline, because, again, as you
There's
said.
a lot of
yes.
people who need to provide information that the planning commission needs to hear, and these are questions that you can discuss with Pete, not at the meeting, but let's let other people hear it.
Yeah, I'll
These
be
are
happy to answer those
Oh, I see.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will just say real quickly, the map you have, that's a Sharpie on a concept where the road's gonna go. Where specifically the road goes is
We
gonna
don't know
happen
yet.
when surveyors come out and they start looking at exactly the things you brought up.
When they
So,
do they talk to the homeowner?
Most definitely. They have to get on your property. They can't just come tramping through your property, so you'll know when they show up. And they should talk to you well before they show up.
So anyway, I would strongly recommend making some time to call Pete and set an appointment with
Yeah,
him.
we're just kind of newbies in the street. We don't know the
And-
procedures, but
Right.
thank you very much.
And we want to make sure that you get some of your questions answered by staff, because they're very, very helpful.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson. Robert Nelson.
He's outside.
Hey, come on down.
And while he's coming down, I just want to also
And
say
thank you for your handouts there.
that the city generally doesn't initiate development as well. So these are private property developing their property.
Bob
that's where you
LaSalle?
see those roads.
Bob LaSalle.
Copy, Daydream.
Hi, I'm Bob Nelson, and I live on Holly Lane, quite a ways from here. What concerns me is I gave you two maps. One is map landslides, and the other one is the one with all of the color. That is the landscape, our landslide hazard map. And I want you to take a good look at that, to give you an idea of where the property is, this little spot up here. And Commissioner, maybe that most likely the piece of property that's for sale very inexpensively has this little red spot. That's that's a landslide area. It's most likely in that 10 acres. But this gives you an idea of the whole area. The area that you're working with is right about in here. It's a small area. And the roads did not copy from my photocopier for your pieces. These were brought off today off of the Oregon Department of Geology
LiDAR
and
maps.
Minerals. So they have something they call their landslide hazard maps. And that's what I Googled, Oregon City landslide hazard map. And this is what you can get, okay?
Do you happen to know Christine Kaczynski?
Oh, yes.
We have been well-schooled in this.
Really, the planning department should be giving you these, and they may have, I don't know. Hopefully, because it's a great map. Now, most of this area that is considered here is yellow, which means, and the key here says yellow is a moderate landslide possibility. So, and then there's some oranges going in there. The red colors are existing landslides, just to give you an idea of what's there. So building in this area is putting houses in, they're uninsurable. We're talking about building a bridge over Lipsey Creek so that they can continue Holly Lane. the creeks are orange. So who's going to pay to replace these things if they fail? And this area really shouldn't be in the landslide at all. I was very happy to hear that you're going to listen to Scott Burns. And as the old saying goes, he doesn't have a fight, he doesn't have a dog in the fight. Okay? Doesn't matter to him. But listen to him, because he's going to tell you the truth. He isn't a developer, he's not a homeowner. He's just going to tell you the flat out truth. And I was very happy to hear that he was coming there. And so go on their landslide site, the state of Oregon, and take a peek. You'll be not pleasantly surprised. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Just real quickly, Pete, we've gotten these, several times, and I'm not complaining about it. I'm just, one of the things that would be helpful is there a way on the LiDAR maps or the maps that we have to show the outlines? Because he was saying he was trying to copy them, showing where some boundaries were.
Oh, the outline of the annexation area?
Yeah. I don't know if that's possible, or does that show
We
up
can
on?
talk to our GS staff.
Does that show up on our geohazards maps?
We can show it on our GIS
Okay.
maps, for sure.
Because it's
Yeah.
helpful, but
I'm sure we can.
It's some blobs, so,
Yeah.
okay. Bob,
Let me write that down.
thank you so much.
Good evening, Chair McGriff and Commissioners. My name is Bob LaSalle, and I live in Oregon City. I'd like to remind you of Oregon City Municipal Code Title 14 Annexation, which the applicant did bring up earlier, but didn't go quite far enough. In section 14.04.060.A, point 3 and point 7 states, quote, "When receiving a proposed annexation, the commission shall consider the following relevant," unquote. Please note the word shall and not may, which means you must consider the following factors. Point 3, the adequacy and availability of public facilities and services to potential development. Note the phrase potential development, not planned development. So people's testimony can be relevant even if it isn't directed exactly toward specifically annexation or zone change. Potential development. Now, this evening you gave staff and the applicant 60 minutes to testify. I timed it. It was almost exactly 60 minutes. As the designated spokesperson for the Park Place Neighborhood Association, I'd like to request that I be given at the next meeting, hopefully you'll continue this, 15 minutes of testimony in consideration of the, I'd say, fairness. And I would like to request a continuation due to the ramifications and size of this issue we have. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Bob. So, Laura, I believe that you and I had discussed the time, and so the applicants did receive 15 minutes. There were questions that we asked, which was not part of their 15 minutes, but I personally don't have any problem with granting that request. I have to get the approval of these other folks here, but
I understand that.
we will get to that.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you. Tom Guile. Do you have any problem with that? Today, well.
These are for each of the commissioners.
Don't start my time yet.
Not yet.
I want to get myself organized. I don't have all the binders and books that Mr. Robinson has, but I want to be like Michael Robinson tonight. I've taken copious notes, and I want to address a lot of these little things. Oh, I'm Tom Guile. I guess you said that.
I don't know if you introduce yourself, your time starts.
Oh, okay. I'm not Tom Guile. Don't give me a few more minutes. I've been writing down notes here this evening, like Michael does, about all the different things. And I wanted to bring up a few issues. One of them was the tree cutting. And I know that they say it's in the county. We ran into this last summer. The tree cutting went on all summer long. But I just keep wondering how many more trees are going to be cut down until there's nothing left, and then you won't have anything to review. That's just one thought. I took pictures, I submitted them, so you can see all those pictures. I think Mr. Ziegler didn't read my whole article. Can you put up the first map that you had up there of the area, not the site, but the one before? The one before that shows the roads, right there.
The road?
You had it. The comprehensive plans. What I was trying to tell everybody in that article, if you look, is that, let's see, you don't have the road right there, but all those 3 stub roads all come into Trailview, and they all exit on Winston Drive. However, as Mr. Ziegler pointed out, we're planning on a new road. There's no new road in that area over there. The road is over here. So you tell us.
Let me find that map real quick. There you go.
So you tell us, well, I like the other map better. It kind of shows it.
But this does show the stub road connections and the other.
It doesn't quite show them in relation to our neighborhood. I'm trying to relate it to our neighborhood of Trailview. So right here, Journey Drive, Cattle Drive, Shatner Drive, if all those were to be opened up, tell me why all those people in that huge chunk over there would travel all the way over here to go up that new road over there.
The little.
I wish I had a pointer, but my nose doesn't go that far. And by the way, I didn't say greetings, commissioners. I've been listening to so much tonight that I just kind of lost track of it.
It moves slower. You got a little hand moving around.
There it is. Okay, so if you look at that, I'm not sure if you can see it where you are.
we can see the hand.
There's these stub roads, but all these people in this area, once this gets built out, they're not going to travel all the way back over here and up here to get on Holcomb Boulevard. They're going to take Cattle Drive, they're going to take Shatner Drive, and they're going to take Journey Drive. And that's where all these families are, with children playing basketball, riding their trikes. We've already experienced that this morning. The head of our HOA told us that several trucks looking for this area up here came into Winston Drive. They got confused, turned around. It was 5:30 this morning, and they had their beepers on, trying to back up and get out because they were in the wrong area. But we know that that's going to be. Pardon?
Trucks were in there, you said?
It came down Winston Drive at 5:30 this morning. Big construction trucks.
Oh, construction trucks.
Excuse me, yes. They were trying to get to the area up here, but they took the wrong road. So again, all of this traffic in here, they're not going to come all the way down here, take this road and go all the way up here. They're going to take shortcuts through Cattle Drive, through Shatner, and through Journey. That was just one quick thing. I hope you saw that testimony and in the article that I submitted to you from the Oregon City News. With all due respect to the trip analysis and to the people who put it together, it always seems to favor the developer and the city. And if you don't live there, you have no idea what is reasonable to somebody who's living in that area. You've heard from Jackie, you've heard from so many people on Holcomb Boulevard. You have no idea until you've lived in that area how bad it can be. Most of those traffic studies are paid for by the developers and or the city's engineers. The citizens voted 3 times on this, 3 times overwhelmingly to say no to this. And yet here we are again because of the governor signed that bill. And I have a feeling that we were talking about those 3 homes that are up there. If we were to push for them to be a part of this and not be islands, and it went to a vote of the people, a 4th time, I can guarantee you that it would go down again. Once the people are informed and educated about the traffic at Redland and Holcomb and 213, they're not going to like this. So I have one other little thing here is Bob Mahoney, you mentioned something about the fire departments in the area. Do you know that next to me, I was standing outside my house right here with a hose, trying to hose down my house. This house right next to me here burned down. This house here burned down. These are new homes, 2003. The fire trucks did come down here and get through. The only way to get out was to come around and go back up here and go back up Winston. I'm kind of shaking this a little bit, but we've already had 2 homes completely burned to the ground. And that is a fairly wide street there, but still, the fire trucks and ambulances were parked like this at angles. So we had Channel 2, Channel 8, and they all came down this road, and they parked here blocking the fire trucks, taking pictures of all this. if they have those access open, yes, they can exit through there, but it's going to bring all that traffic into that area. The only last thing I wanted to say, this was nothing to do with what my presentation was going to be tonight. In 2008, when we did the concept plan, Mayor Norris and a group of city officials, including Larry Patterson, took a trolley car ride up into the Trailview area to see the whole area. They went all around here and to see what was in the topography and what it looked like. Since that time, I've had Kent Ziegler there a couple times, and we talked about the road. I've had Rick Givens there to talk about the road and the trees. I've had David Frazier when he was here. I've had Mayor Dan Holliday. And I really think it's important that you may all have all the commissioners driven up around Holcomb and seen some of this, but you really haven't seen it until you come down and let me walk you through this area right here and walk through this area. If the mayors have been able to do this, if the commissioners previously could do it, I really suggest that we take a field trip. You can bring the developers with you, you can bring Laura, anybody, but I think we need, and you deserve to come up here and look at this pinch point right here. This is the narrow area that the road has to get through, and it's so narrow that even Rick, when he was looking, I was wondering if this person right here might give up some of their property. This is owned by an attorney who does not want to give up any of his property. So all traffic coming from here has to get through this narrow pinch point. I really request that you all plan on a dry day to do a field trip up in the Trailview area. The fence opens up behind my house. Let's walk out here. I'll show you this whole area. We can walk around the backyards here. This is an area you haven't seen because you haven't been in the backyards of these individuals. And I would like to have you have that opportunity before you make a decision, before the next meeting in May. We've got to have one dry day coming up. Wear your galoshes, but come back here and take a look at this, and you'd be amazed how narrow this area is. And that's where they want to put that road through. And it's not a connector road, it's a headache road for all these people living here. This person right here has 3 children. They had hoped to be here tonight, but they couldn't. I think I've said enough. I kind of feel like Mike, I owe you all allegiance. I hit a lot of points really fast, but that's because I know the time's limited. Please consider Laura and all the commissioners having a field trip and coming up here and walking out and seeing this area from within the area rather than just off Holcomb Boulevard. I'd appreciate it, and I know most of the Park Place neighborhood would appreciate it. Okay?
Well,
Thank you.
We can figure
Any
out
questions?
to find a day that we can all go, and Laura she has to announce it. It has to be published that we're going to have a field trip of the commission so that it can be notified, so that there's no question about anything. So,
and that's the way it was when Mayor Norris did it. It was just a trolley car and anybody who wanted to see.
Yeah.
And I said all this fast, but that's because I know there was a lot to cover from what I heard tonight.
So we'll talk to Laura about that.
That would be appreciated by everybody. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, is there anybody that's outside the commission room that would like an opportunity to speak? As I see you all peering in. Hi there. Anybody want to come in and testify? Shake your head no if you don't want to.
No, they're all no's.
No, our no's? Okay, all right. Anybody in the audience? All right, so we'll have, I'd hoped to get this done by 10 after, so I'm going to shoot for 9:25 because we have another item on the agenda. So 5 minutes, Mr. Robinson, sir.
Thanks, Chairman Griff, members of the commission, Michael Robinson on behalf of the applicant. So I'm not going to try and address everything that was said tonight. We appreciate what people had to say, and we appreciate them coming out tonight and letting us know their thoughts, because you're going to continue the hearing.
Mike, could you hold on just a quick second? Excuse me, if you, would you mind just going out in the lobby, because it's really hard to hear him, and we want to make sure that we get to hear everybody, and I appreciate that you guys want to chat. So thank you so very much. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for letting me interrupt for just a quick second.
That's all right. Thank you very much. We'll submit something in writing that answers some of this in more detail, but let me make these points, and Rick may have something to add in our 5 minutes. First of all, this is not a site that has not been examined by the city. When you listen to the testimony, it sounds as though this is the first time that the city's ever looked at that site. Not true, because as you know, we had to get into the urban growth boundary, which is not an easy task. And without explaining it in detail, there are numerous sites to choose from. A site that can't be developed is not going to get into the urban growth boundary. It's that simple. But beyond that, you did a concept plan, which was required to develop this area. And if you had believed that it couldn't be developed, you wouldn't have adopted a concept plan. So the idea that suddenly this area can't be developed, which is like many other areas throughout Western Oregon, is absurd. It can be developed. And beyond that, your plan implements statewide planning goal 7, which is in turn implemented by a provision in the Oregon City Municipal Code, which guides development on steep slopes. So local government, state government, and the regional government have all thought about how areas like this are going to be developed. And I will say this to those who believe they are experts on landslide insurance. Forget the insurance that people can or can't buy for their homes. If this is truly an area that can't be developed, the developer is never going to get a construction loan. There's never going to be anything developed. You don't have to worry about homes because there won't be any homes to construct. So the idea that somehow you're going to get all the way to the, and it's not relevant to an approval criterion, but I've heard it enough, it deserves a response. The idea that you're going to get all the way to the construction of a home with a mortgage lender and then suddenly can't get insurance, that's facetious. It does not exist in the real world of real estate financing, period. Secondly, the whole reason that we did a traffic study and 2 addenda is to address legitimate questions raised by objective agencies, the city, the county, and the state. We don't pay them. Our application fee does not cover the state's review. It doesn't cover the county's review. My guess is it barely covers what the city does. But each of those agencies reviewed that study objectively and in good faith because they're all engineers with a professional stamp in this state. They're not paid by us. And they don't come out in favor of the applicant. If we wanted something in our favor, we wouldn't have agreed to a series of 10 conditions of approval that requires us to make improvements and pay our pro rata share to implement the city's acknowledged transportation system plan, which is what the transportation analysis is all about. Because at the end of the day, we have to show that the performance levels at all of the intersections will either be acceptable or be made better. And that's what this TPR analysis requires. That's what the state and your city engineer found were satisfied. Let me see if there's anything else that might be helpful. The issues folks raised deserve answers, but they deserve legitimate answers. And what we've tried to say tonight is this is annexation and zoning. This is not development. None of us know what the market's going to provide for. In 2006, I suspect a lot of people believed they would develop in the next couple of years. Some of those properties are still being developed now. It depends on the market, it depends on the master plan. But all of this is a public process that you will see again, and that when whoever develops this property is ready to do the master plan, then we'll engage in that discussion. But we're not talking about development tonight. We're talking about whether the criteria for annexation have been met, which is principally concerned with the provision of services and transportation, and whether the criteria for the zoning map amendment have been met, which is principally concerned with the compliance with your plan, and again, the provision of services and transportation, in addition to the state administrative rule, the transportation planning rule, demonstrating that we won't make transportation worse. And again, that's what all of those conditions in John's March 29th letter require us to do, not make it worse. So we appreciate the fact that folks came out tonight. At least I'm paid to be here. Folks that come out tonight and testify, they're doing it because they think it's the right thing to do for their community, and they should be applauded for that. But just because they don't like development or what this proposes doesn't mean that it shouldn't be approved. And as you've been asked to do, to reach your decision in making a recommendation to the City Commission, we respectfully ask that you address the approval criteria and relate the facts that are relevant to those approval criteria. And we think if you do, you'll find that we met our job of meeting our burden of proof, and that this annexation and zoning map amendment application should be recommended for approval. We thank you for your time. We look forward to coming back and speaking to you again on the 14th of May.
I'd just add one quick little thought, and that is that there are a lot of legitimate questions that were raised tonight in testimony. People have a lot of concerns. Many of them are things that we think can be addressed simply, and many require detailed studies. They are things that will be addressed in the preparation of the master plan, geotech analysis, all those kinds of things, engineering, design and cost analysis, looking at phasing. All of that stuff is certainly something that needs to be looked at in detail, but it's not something that needs to be looked at in detail at an annexation stage. It's something that needs to be looked at during the master plan process. We just want to get into the city so that we can begin that process. And we know that there's a long road to go before anybody approves any development on this property. We got to start somewhere.
Thank you, Chairman Griff.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and request a motion for continuance and leave the record open, et cetera, et cetera. So
To May 14th?
Yes, who'd like to do that?
I move.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we continue this item until May 14th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in this very room, and we will leave the record open.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Chairman Griff?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson? Aye. Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Continue to May 14th.
Okay, folks, May 14th. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, do you guys want a quick break or keep going?
Well, we just,
Okay,
yeah,
all
we
right,
just got to.
Tom, come on back up.
Am I allowed now?
We're going to go to the next public hearing. We'll make the exchange here.
I thought it may have been.
Welcome back.
If you're going to have a conversation, please step on out. We're going to the next public hearing, so the next crew, come on in. We're going to keep moving.
Development started.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
I just turned it on because it was.
All right, so is the applicant here this evening, or the applicant's representative? Okay. All right, so we're going to go to the next public hearing on our agenda, which is an application of, let's see, it does have a number, sorry about that. CD 1801, code interpretation to allow structured parking on a pre-existing non-conforming use for Lithia Subaru of Oregon City. And who's given that delightful staff report?
That is me.
All
One second,
right.
Let me get myself in order.
Do we need to do the?
Yes, okay, so before I go, let's, okay, has everyone, does anybody have any ex parte contacts? Have people visited the site? And is there anything that you'd like to declare? So we'll start with Tom.
I don't know the Subaru. There, I drive by every day.
Okay, but you've driven by it,
I
okay.
have to drive by it every day.
Yep. I drive by it every day, no ex parte contacts, nothing else to declare.
Bob?
I drive by it daily and nothing else to declare.
Vern? Just speak up. I don't need to call your name.
My family owns 2 Subarus, and we have used Lithia as a business partner, so I hope that's.
Oh, I'm
not
sorry, you're
have
gonna have to disqualify yourself.
Kind of a business, I don't have any bias in the deliberation, so if anybody has any objection.
Oh, we'll check, no.
Okay.
Anyway, yes,
Go
I'm
on.
extremely familiar with the site, not only with this particular business being at that location, but 2 other prior businesses, and I do own a Subaru, but it was not purchased from there. So, all right, so does anybody in the audience wish to challenge the commission's declarations of site visits, owning Subarus, et cetera? Okay, so we don't see anybody? All right. So Laura, excuse me.
Wait a second, Bill's
So
doing it.
Bill, do you
there's
own a
also the
Subaru?
I do not own a Subaru, but there is 197763 warnings. You did read them at the beginning of the first
Yes,
hearing.
I'm not
but
gonna read them again.
Just might want to confirm with those intending to testify that they heard the 197763.
Were you here when I read through the whole schmear about land use and the hearing and criteria, et cetera, and him pointing?
We could not get in the room, so we did.
Well, it was broadcast outside.
Very familiar.
Okay, so
So you would
is it
waive
okay with
any
you
reading?
that I don't read it again?
Absolutely.
Thank you
So
so
they've
much.
confirmed that.
I appreciate that. Okay, Christina.
All right. Thank you, Chair McGiff, Planning Commissioners. So we are here tonight because the applicant is requesting a Planning Commission interpretation to allow an additional level of structured parking / car storage on a pre-existing non-conforming use. And you kind of have 2 options this evening. If the Planning Commission finds that the proposal does not constitute intensification of the pre-existing nonconforming use, the applicant will submit a Type 2 site plan and design review for the construction of the structure. If the Planning Commission finds that the proposal does constitute an intensification of the pre-existing nonconforming use, the applicant will obtain and use the existing parking fleet storage in its current condition. The reason we are presenting this to you this evening is we don't have a clear and objective definition for expansion or intensification, and staff felt that a Type 3 code interpretation was the best venue for this application. There are two relevant previous approvals that kind of helped in staff's analysis. In 2015, the applicant came through and did a minor site plan for changes to circulation. And in 2014, the applicant removed an accessory structure and built a new car washing station. And I'll point those out in the next slides. And staff in both the 2015 and 2014 site plan and design reviews found that the use was a pre-existing non-conforming use, and both of them they found was not considered an intensification. So the proposed parking deck is in the area where you see the red star. It would be accessed off of Main Street.
Main? Oh, the upper level.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is an aerial showing the star again that you saw in the site plan layout, and kind of fleet lot A and B, just to give you a little orientation, as the ones that front McLaughlin Boulevard. And as part of this proposal, those spaces are proposed not to change, so there will not be removal of parking spaces in that area. Here's a view of Main Street, and so the structured parking, you would basically drive on grade from Main Street into the upper level.
And where is that again?
This is on Main Street. So to your right of the photo is the
Are you
showroom.
pointing to it?
Yeah, so I'd be looking straight into it. And you can see it better on the side elevation. So when we talk in the staff report about an existing structure, it's the retaining wall area. So the applicant is, in a sense, proposing to extend onto that retaining wall and build the second level. This you can see from 15th Street, where the existing parking would remain, and then there would be this additional level added on top of it with access from
Christina,
Main Street.
can I interrupt you for 1
Sure.
second? Our computers say the network connection was disrupted. So
course
can
it
we,
was.
Ours isn't.
Whenever we sign out, sign back in.
We're doing fine.
do you mind to pause for a moment while
Sure.
I check, make sure we have our feed?
Good, we've been needing some downtown parking.
It's not available for you.
Darn.
It is if you own a Subaru, so you just go buy a Subaru.
I own a hearse, does that count?
Unless it's a Subaru Hearst, I don't think so.
Okay. We're pausing, so. Technology.
So seriously, I can feel my blushing. Nervous coming in front of you.
Even when I stepped away from it for various things, I know it's the same way.
And I forgot half of what I said, even though I went on.
You write it down.
So as they say on the,
Yeah. So this happened
This line was going up here.
previously at another, the Historic Review Board, and this will be recorded, so if we can't get it up. then-
ours is, so
Okay.
you just talked about you can't change?
Yeah,
Because we can still see what we're talking about.
Right, the online recording is lost its connection.
disrupted.
So we still are recording on a DVD. So if we can't get that, we will continue the DVD recording, and the DVD will be uploaded.
Okay,
But we'll
perfect.
wait until we hear from.
Okay. All right.
It's all those people from Park Place clicking in to see what the testimony was, and it's like, too late.
Yes, exactly what you just said.
Yeah. So we will continue, and we will use the DVD recording and upload that onto our website tomorrow morning. But it's still running the DVD. We lost our connection.
Yes.
Darn that
Okay.
Comcast.
We wrestle with the ground.
So as you see, this is the view from 15th Street.
It says it would like to connect.
Oh,
It's asking us to connect, so say accept, I guess. Hey, all right.
So, well, this is not a site plan and design review. This is just a conceptual elevation showing what the parking structure would look like. So the car is entering in from Main Street. So we're looking at the 15th Street elevation, so kind of here to here. And once again, if the Planning Commission this evening does find that this is not an intensification of use, this conceptual drawing will be refined, and then a full site plan and design review application will be turned in that meets our municipal code of 1762 site plan and design review. So the applicant, just to summarize the applicant's findings, as staff, they had initial submittal and a supplement to their submittal. I want to let the Planning Commission know that there was a misreading of the applicant's initial submittal, which I made copies for on your dais, and that it will be added into the record tonight as Exhibit A, and it is available for you to read, as well as the addendum, which is part of the agenda this evening. So the applicant, their findings, they contend that the use of property will remain the same Subaru dealership, and the applicant is not proposing to add any uses or new uses or activities on site. They contend that storage for inventory has always been an element of the dealership, as it is with any retail automobile dealership. They contend that adding additional inventory space has not changed the business model or increase or decrease the number of customers who will come to the store to buy a car, and should not be seen as an intensification of use. And if approved, the Planning Commission, if approved by the Planning Commission, the applicant will submit for a Type 2 site plan and design review. Let's see. The reason staff asked for the addendum is on this, really, you have the question of if adding additional inventory supplies is considered an intensification of use. Because in this situation, the applicant is not requesting removal of any existing parking spaces. And so that applicant did submit that addendum, and he's available this evening if you have any additional questions regarding their kind of thought process on their proposal for that. So because even though we don't have definitions for intensification or expansion, I wanted to put here the purpose of our nonconforming chapter. And nonconforming situations are created when the application of zoning district to a site changes or the zoning regulations change. As part of the change, existing uses, densities, or development might no longer be allowed or further restricted. Nonconforming uses, structures, and lots are those uses, structures, and lots that were lawfully established but do not conform to the provisions of this title or the provisions of the zoning district in which the use, structure, or lot is located. The intent of these provisions is not to force all nonconforming situations immediately to be brought into conformance. Instead, the intent is to guide nonconforming situations in a new direction consistent with city policy and eventually bring them into conformance. The section you're really looking at this evening is 1758 lawful nonconforming uses, structures, and lots. Specifically F, no lawful use may be replaced by a different type of nonconforming use, nor may any legal nonconforming use be expanded or intensified. So that's really the code interpretation you're looking at this evening is F of chapter 1758. And in this situation, as the applicant proposed adequate findings to make that determination. This is not citywide. This is any decision by the Planning Commission tonight is for this application and with this proposal. So you're not setting precedent for your decision this evening. It is subject just to this application. So I'm available to answer any questions, and the applicant is here, and I can go back to any of the photos or maps if you have any specific questions.
I got a question for you. Why is this use classified as a non-conforming use in the first place?
Because we changed the code.
Well, as far as I know from the car sales was an allowed use, and I believe in our comprehensive plan update in the early 80s, it was no longer a permitted use. And so when it was originally installed and created, it was a permitted use. And then subsequently our zone change, our new zoning, which was most likely Central Business District, CBD, in the early 80s, identified the car sales as no longer a permitted use.
It's the same code.
Which makes this area a pre-existing non-conforming use.
We also did that review at the same time we did away with drive-throughs and those sort of things. So, we're not going to get McDonald's downtown, I'm using them as a generic like Kleenex. So we won't get any drive-through uses, that sort of thing. So when we reviewed Dutch Brothers, that was a drive-through bank. And what we were concerned about, that application was an intensification of use.
Yeah, and I think what the applicant is kind of the crux of their comment is making improvements to the site that meet our current site plan design review code is a way for them to continue as a business, but also become conforming in the sense that what is built is conforming to our code. So if there is ever a time when the use is no longer a car dealership, all the new improvements that are made on site are conforming to the mixed-use downtown zone.
Well, the only thing I got against these people is they're out of Ashland. They got something to do with that fountain down in Ashland Park. And that drinking water
No, they don't have anything
that
to
I
do with
gave to my wife on our honeymoon. I
water.
said, try this. Huh? Is that you people?
No. 50 years ago, did they have anything to do with the water? No, I don't think so.
Strike that from the record.
Yes. Any questions for Christina?
No, I mean, my big question was, what is it we're supposed to be interpreting? And you finally put it up here.
Yes.
Because trying to find it and all the
Yeah.
scrollings up and down.
I found it.
So, boom, that's
That is
I
what
need to
you
know.
are interpreting F based on what the applicant is proposing to do,
Thank
which
you.
is the additional structured.
So this seems pretty benign. Is there anything that, I couldn't think of anything that would be an issue further down the line? Because once we apply this standard to interpreting non-conforming uses, we're going to have to do that in the future to anything else.
That is true, I'm sorry.
And so I'm just concerned that,
Yeah.
just make sure that
Yeah, I think in this situation, when the planning commission makes their motion, if the planning commission moves forward to approve this code interpretation, and I'll let Mr. Kabizman add to this, but you can make your specific findings for this application, why this is, why you're making this finding, and that, in additional, there are additional submittals for other places, for other proposals. You can recommend that staff continue the analysis we did, which was when there's a gray area, we send it to a type 3 process.
Yeah, because I can't think of anything in specific, but I think that there could be a situation where we would not want to, that the threshold that meets design review standards would not be an appropriate threshold for a non-conforming use that we'd want to perpetuate. And I'm just hoping that we don't snooker ourselves into a corner about when we make this interpretation in doing something that, may force us to do something that's less desirable, that's all.
Yeah, exactly, and I'll let Mr. President speak to that if there's anything more, but I recommend any deliberations and
Like I
motions
said,
that.
I don't have a problem with this, but I just,
Could you go back to the slide that shows basically, not this picture, but, yes,
That one.
Nope.
Nope.
One more.
That one?
Nope.
Nope.
One more.
The other direction.
The other direction, sorry.
Yes,
There you
that
go.
one. So what is the deal with those cars that are parked right adjacent to the sidewalk where pedestrians would be walking?
As far as I know, that's not part of the sidewalk. That is part of the applicant's property, but I can let the applicant speak to that. I believe the right-of-way ends at you can kind of see the expansion
So how
joint.
did the cars get there? Did they go over the curb?
I don't know. I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Then is it relevant?
Well, it's relevant from the standpoint that it pertains to site plan, because I can see one of the cars' back wheels are into the landscaping, and I'd like to see more landscaping here. And if that could be a landscaping area, that would be really great, because nobody wants to walk next to cars when you're walking down the street, because cars.
Unless you're car shopping.
Yeah, unless you're car shopping, anyway, okay. I just had a question about it, anyway. Christopher and Eric, you both want to come up, or one of you? Sure.
Yep. Got 2 seats, might as well use them.
Yep, they're already warmed up.
oh, yeah.
We observe that. And hopefully, this will be a little shorter than the matter you just had. So I'm Chris Koback, and I represent Lithia Real Estate, the owner of the property and the applicant. Eric Iverson is the, Director of Real Estate for Lithia. We're going to try to be as brief as possible and leave a lot of time to answer questions, because I think that's going to be a valuable use of our time. This site's been a car dealership for a long time. We don't even know how far back, but
Oh, I do.
anecdotally, we've heard about 50 years. Lithia's owned it since about 2000, give or take a couple years. And as you've seen from the prior slides, recently, the site is really tight, and it's old, and it's not very convenient. There's not a good flow, and there's some elements that could be safer for employees and customers on the site. So Lithia's been doing some stuff. They have 2 applications where one, they built a new building. They did improve some of the circulation. This is just another step for that. So the parking deck will be it will add an area that's very convenient for customers to come and pick up cars, to come and test drive cars. The inventory that customers are coming to see will be closer to the sales building. Currently, as you've seen from the photographs, like many car dealerships, to meet fluctuation in demand, their dealerships either buy or lease property off-site. And Lithia's done that as well. They lease and buy lots so they can meet the fluctuating demands. This will allow, it's not really to design specifically to increase inventory. It's really to make the inventory operate a little better and the whole site operate a little better, because right now that the existing level of the structure is below. To get there from the main building, you have to actually walk down a ramp that's also used as a driveway.
It's weird.
So this way, to get to that, the new deck, customers, employees, et cetera, will walk just straight across. There'll be a protected walkway into the front, into the structure, so they don't have to go down that ramp. It'll be also more convenient for customers getting into the service station, which they go in the same way off Main Street. And that's the primary purpose. But I want to spend most of the time addressing the critical issue, which is this an intensification or expanding of the use? And we've submitted and continue to submit that this is not in any way an expansion or an intensification of the underlying use. We're not adding, or Lithia is not adding any activity that's never been on the site. This is an activity that's been ongoing on this site before Lithia, since Lithia's owned it, and it happens with every car dealership. It's places for inventory and where customers can come pick up their cars, test drive cars, conduct their business. It would be different if we were adding a cafe or a different type of business. And that's why I think if you read that definition that was just up on the screen, can we have that? So no lawful non-conforming use may be replaced by a different use, nor may a legal non-conforming use be expanded or intensified. I think if you read that in context, it really does contemplate adding something that wasn't there before. Either you're making a whole different use or you're adding a use that wasn't there. That's an expansion, that's an intensification. There was a question with staff, and we really appreciated the dialogue. Staff was very approachable. In fact, they helped us identify some issues. And the one issue was, well, if you're not giving up space and you're going to at least have the potential for additional inventory on your site, aren't you expanding and intensifying the use? Because you might be able to sell more cars. The way we look at it is the amount of inventory you may have at any given time does not reflect the level of sales or business in a retail context. Retail businesses exist to increase sales. It doesn't always happen every year. So a car dealership, like any other retail business, sales are going to fluctuate. The economy, the demand, the management is primarily responsible. If you have a good leader, you're going to sell more, like any other business. So the fact that there may be additional space for inventory doesn't necessarily mean the business is going to even expand in sales if you use sales as an indicator of an expansion, which we don't believe is the appropriate indicator. For example, if any non-conforming retail was deemed to have intensified because they expanded sales, then they could never expand their sales. They couldn't add a salesperson. They couldn't do anything to increase their ability to sell. And they exist to do that. So we think the best indicator is the use the same? Are we adding any kind of use to it? Are we, for example, we were talking out in the hall, if you have an aluminum business, they mold aluminum plates, and then they want to add a smelting so that they make their own aluminum raw product on the site. Well, that would be an intensification, we believe. That's a new activity that was never on that non-conforming site. If they did something so that they could sell 1,000 more of their product one month than they did the last month, well, we don't think that's an intensification of the use. That's just doing what you're supposed to do, is increasing sales and maybe providing additional jobs, which is what retail businesses should strive for, we think. So that's our position on why it's not an intensification of the use. We understand there are going to be issues like landscaping. There's going to be issues about how cars get on that front area. All of that will be fully vetted in a site plan review and design review, and we understand that. And we think that's the appropriate place to deal with those issues. We understand the code requires that new development in this context has to come into conformity. In fact, development on the whole site, yes, there's a code provision that we're supposed to work with the city to do that, and we're committed to doing that. So those types of issues we're very prepared to handle in the next phase of this if we're fortunate enough to get your approval tonight. And if you have any questions of me or Mr. Iverson, we're happy to respond to them.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions?
Well, I've got a question. I don't know if I should direct it to you or to our legal attorney. What is a legal non-conforming use?
So if you have property zoned as residential and let's say you have a restaurant on it, a legal non-conforming use would be one that was established and was zoned for commercial and restaurants were allowed and the zoning changed. That's legal. If somebody just built a restaurant out there, they've got an illegal non-conforming use because it wasn't legal when it was built.
Well, they'd have a legal use.
They'd have an illegal use, illegal non-conforming, illegal all the way.
So as it stands now, the use of the property is illegal.
Is a legal non-conforming use.
Non-conforming use.
Correct.
Okay.
Because typically you'd think that if you got a restaurant in a residential zone, well, that's illegal. That's not allowed by the zone.
Let me ask you another question. I don't have any problem with the request. My problem is with the language and how to justify approving this thing. Are we in legal? Are we on good legal ground if we do it, or can somebody challenge us with this language here? And what's your best judgment?
So, could somebody challenge it? Of course, somebody can always challenge it. There's nobody here to testify, so they'd have a problem.
Do they have a good standing to do it?
No, they're not here.
I think Christina said that this would not set a precedent. If you're concerned about, my opinion is that if you're concerned about Joe Schmo coming in or Jane Schmo coming in and saying, well, you approved the expansion of this non-conforming use for Lithia, and so I'm coming in for the same thing. It's not the same thing.
I think if there's another auto dealer who wanted to come in and build structured parking, there might well be, there are some opportunities to change interpretations, but they're kind of limited and it gets into complexity that we don't need to deal with here. But if it's somebody else coming in who wants to add, fried chicken to a hamburger restaurant, is that an expansion? That's a different set of facts. I think we could look at that separately. I think it's within your policy judgment to decide whether or not this is an expansion or an intensification. And I would find it difficult to believe that that's something that could be challenged.
I got one more. This is to deal with the existing inventory that Lithia has. Let's say they wanted to build this to accommodate additional cars because sales were going through the roof. Would that be an intensification of use?
So again, I think that's within your policy call, and you guys would be able to tell, you guys have been delegated the authority to make that determination. I think I would tell you that whichever way you ended up on it, I could defend it.
Okay.
Okay,
That's what I need to know, because
So, to use your own analogy of the aluminum plant, I agree with if they start smelting, they're doing something new. But if they have to build a warehouse to store the excess inventory because their sales have increased, that's an intensification and an expansion. And an extra layer of property on your land, i.e. the street level parking, is effectively a car warehouse. So unless it's just places for people to park so they can get off the street or to turn around, I think it's an intensification of the use, which really bothers me because I like what you're trying to do. So that's where I'm kind of caught up on it. And I guess the other question I have goes to Bill, which is, you use hamburgers and
chicken,
but KFC is now part of the A&W thing, and they sell hamburgers in their chicken place. Do they have to come for a new?
My memory is that that's an allowed use. It may be a non-conforming structure, but I believe it's an allowed
Town
use.
doesn't do hamburgers.
Yeah. So, but anyway, it gets back to, you know, if it's, I guess the where I would go is how de minimis is it? You know, you're looking for just street level. You're not trying to get 2, 3, 4 levels. And I'm just trying to think, where else could this bite us? Even though it's site specific, my experience from contract is
Unintended consequences.
is this isn't precedent setting. This isn't precedent setting. This isn't but the 6th or 7th time you say it's not precedent setting, it's a precedent, and they get to pull that all in.
I think the evidence in the record is that.
Okay, so are we having discussion, or are we still asking the applicant
Yeah, I was
questions?
going to, if it's okay, I was going to respond to.
Because if we're
Mr.
still, if we're
Navy's,
asking questions, we
question.
can go there, but I'll close it so we can discuss.
Yeah, I understand that you know, there's always a concern in any decision-making process about a slippery slope. But on the smelting example, if the smelting company came in and said, I want to build a brand-new building, I'm not sure your code allows that if they're non-conforming, because your code only allows expansions of existing structures. And so when you combine your code that only allows expansions of existing structures and the language up there about not intensifying the use, if the smelting company had the capacity to retrofit an existing structure to house more product because sales fluctuate, well, that's where we don't think that's an intensification of use in a retail context, because retail businesses have to have the ability to meet demands which are not always consistent. And for example, a lot of car dealerships lease property off-site. So they could massively increase their inventory, but they don't have to go through this process because it's not on their site. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to emphasize that the primary purpose of this expanded structure is not just to bring in inventory. If bringing in inventory was all you needed to do to have a great, successful retail operation, car dealerships would start by buying massive properties just so they could have all this inventory. They got to pay for it. Yeah. So it's really just, the primary purpose is to make the inventory work better, and make the entire site continue to flow better and in a safer manner. It's better for the customers, it's better for the employees, and ultimately we think it's going to be a significant improvement just visually for the city on the site.
So to deal with the analogies then, you're saying that this is the equivalent of just putting a different type of shelving unit in your warehouse because you're staying inside the footprint.
Exactly. We're adding capacity somewhat, but it's just like putting a new shelf in. We're not creating a new structure. We're not going out.
Well, you are
Well, we're adding to a structure.
But you're not changing your footprint.
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask what word you used, Dominicus?
De minimis.
De minimis.
De minimis.
Tiny, not a big thing.
I had to look it up, and something about a Woolworths page or something similar to Dominicus. I'm like, what?
All right, I've got a couple of questions and a couple of comments. Just for your information, the prior dealership, so you had said in your report here that it's been a Subaru dealership since the 1970s, and that's not true, because it was John Link.
No, he said they'd only been there since.
It's right here.
That was the information that we provided.
No. Subaru bought it in 2002, like you said, and before that it was John Link.
Chevrolet.
He also had Pontiac, Buick, and he had Mazda.
So we're right on the Pontiac and Buick.
Yes, but I knew that for a fact.
John Link.
You mentioned in your report that this was so is inventory going to be stored on the deck?
Some will, yes.
Current inventory or additional inventory? Because it sounded like in your report that you were saying it was primarily being used for people to look at cars, but there won't be any customer parking there or anything like that, will there? So how many cars are on that lower level right now?
We were just there, Eric.
Eric Iverson with Lithium Motors. I mean, how many cars are on the lower level right now? And that's when we first started this discussion, and even, like I said, when we ended it, when we went to the dealership again tonight, how many cars are on the lower level? When we got there, business was closed. They were basically parked or being stored as sardines down there. Yeah. So there's no aisles, there's no nothing. It was the end of the day.
So how many sardines is that?
I didn't count when I was there. I would say it's probably in the range of 60 to 65. stored down there tonight. I'm sure if we go there at 10 a.m. tomorrow, it will be different because they'll need to be moving cars in and out. There'll probably be 40 down there.
Okay, so how many can you get on the top deck?
Haven't finished designing the top deck yet.
Are you anticipating the same number on the top deck?
The way that the top deck could be laid out would be in such a way, again, it's not designed to be a parking structure like you're familiar with if you were going to park your car at an airport. At a car dealership, we'll double and triple park cars. Because not every single car needs to have driving in and out access. It's more for visibility. So yeah, I mean, we'll match the upper level with the lower level, but again, I think it will make a whole lot more sense and there won't be so much craziness going on that site. I mean, regardless of what property is leased or we purchase off a site, there's still that inventory, whether it's cars being serviced, fresh trade-ins, cars that are being delivered to people that need a place to go.
Yeah, when the truck rolls in with 24 cars on the thing, you gotta get them off because you can't park in the street.
Correct. And the good news, I mean, with some of the off-site property that we have purchased is we do our best. Again, we don't control the drivers who drive the 18-wheelers with 9 cars on them, but we do our best to direct them. Yeah. And we direct them to our off-site storage lots because we don't want them unloading in the middle of the street either.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually a two-part question. So the second part's for you and the first part's for Christina. So I know that a notice of land use application went out. I'm assuming that Three Rivers, I always want to call them Three Rivers because my old tax and accounting firm used to be Three Rivers. So anyway, so Two Rivers, I'm assuming, got the same notice. And did we get any response from them?
We've had no public comment on this application. Actually, it was re-noticed as well, and both notices, we received no public comment.
Did you reach out at all to Three Rivers to ask them for a comment? Two Rivers, sorry, not Two Rivers, Three Rivers, Two Rivers.
No, we didn't at this phase.
Okay. I think it's always a good idea. I'm very much in favor of citizen participation in neighborhood associations because I'm very active in mine, and I would have strongly recommended that even though you didn't feel it's always better to do more with that. So I had written a note, why didn't you reach out to Two Rivers at this phase so that they knew what was going on? And you say in your report that you were going to talk to them when you get to the site plan and design review, but this is also a critical component of that as well. And then the other thing that I made a note of was you made a statement on page 6. You said the mere fact that the dealership may be able to store more of its vehicles closer to the main building is not an expansion of use. But again, as we just discussed, if you get a big load of cars, you're going to throw more cars on there. So I'm a little bit where you are. I'm not saying I'm opposed to this. It's just, it's one of those gray areas. So that's just where I am right now. I'm not opposed to it, but there's a little bit of a gray area right now. Any other questions? Yes,
I have a question for
for staff.
Christina.
Do we have any more for them?
No.
Okay, so let me close the public, there's nobody here, so there's no rebuttal. So let me close the public hearing, and then we can go to staff questions and our deliberation.
Christina? The mission, we have a limited vision here tonight, or a limited mission to interpret the code to say we will approve it or we will deny it. That's our whole job, I think. And if we approve it, you will do this type 2 investigation like they would do with any application. You would go to the neighborhood. Do you do type 2s to the neighborhood? Or do you just do those within your
Full
own?
site plan,
Yeah, this got sent to all the neighborhood associations.
Okay.
You probably got one too,
Right, but
because I got one.
But that's not my point as to whether this has gone to the neighborhood, because this was a specific request for a code interpretation, which that's probably why none of the neighborhood is out here, or because it's that. If it's approved, then you will make it open to the neighborhoods and to their citizens to make comments on it.
Yeah,
And they would talk about landscaping and structure of the building. We're not concerned with the landscaping or construction of the building, what we're doing tonight. I don't think. I'm ready to say, we need to look at the interpretation and make that decision, and that's the end of the.
Yeah, Exactly. I think the applicant has identified that they will go through a type 2 site plan design review process with our current development code. And so at that time, their full site plan design review does require public, a neighborhood association meeting and public comment. It is a staff level decision appealable to City Commission. There's clear and objective standards.
Then what we've got to be able to do is decide that this does not constitute an expansion of a non-conforming use, given the application as presented by the applicant.
Are you ready to make a motion to that effect?
Also move.
Okay, well, I will second it with this condition added to it that staff come back with findings for us to adopt, because we don't really have any at this point, based on our comments and our concerns and our statements, so that we are saying that it does not constitute an expansion of a non-conforming use, and that we'd like a little embellishment to that so that we can adopt that.
I think the key would be to handle the existing inventory as opposed to building this to accommodate
additional
expanding inventory.
Oh, as part of your findings?
Yes.
I'm going to let Mr. President.
It's certainly your call as to what you want to put into the findings or not. But this isn't a situation where we have, 25 different criteria that you've got to find met. They're asking for an interpretation of whether this is or is not.
And I want to justify, so we do not have the situation come back that Commissioner Maybe talked about, was the 5 or 6 different ones coming down the road, and then they all constitute something else. So just wanted to be tight.
Okay.
Because we agree.
Okay.
Just for clarification, so we do have a staff report with findings for you to vote on, with the recommendation that supports the decision that I think that you're saying. The one clarification is, if you want us to come back, do you want to note that the inventory can't be expanded?
I don't think that's what we said.
I mean, ours is saying that the inventory can be expanded, that the structure itself will
We're
comply
saying
with the
that it
zoning.
doesn't constitute an expansion of the, at least that's what I heard you say.
Well, that its sole intent is not
To expand and the inventory.
That it's not just shelves, it's business flow, it's all those other things you said. It isn't just more parking spaces.
It could expand, but it could also contract. So,
Then we have findings that support that
There are
recommendation
findings
tonight.
in the staff report on page 3, page 5 of it. It starts with analysis and findings. And on page 6 in particular, they talk about the finding of lawful non-conforming uses and structures and go through that discussion.
we just didn't want to see a logarithmic expanse of inventory.
Sure.
I would also like to include in that it improves public safety. I've heard that.
Yeah.
The circulation of public on the site will be improved because the availability of units will be more, gosh, I'm running out of words here.
Viewable, open,
Pardon me?
viewable or open.
Less likely to provide the public to.
Ease of access.
Yeah, I'd just like it a little more succinct than just in the staff report where it lists the findings. So when we make our decision, we say we voted yes, and here's why we did this, because here are the findings. They're not buried in a staff report that somebody's going to have to dig through and find. It's just clear, it's right out there, it's there, plus what you said.
Okay, and we could do one of 2 ways as well. We could write those, and Chair McGriff, you could just sign off on it before we send it out, or we can come back for you guys all to vote on. What would you
I feel more
prefer?
comfortable with everybody taking a look at it, because I like the opinion of my fellow commissioners.
Yeah.
And I guess in my deliberations, I'm prepared to agree with that interpretation in this case for 2 things. One, the whole, it's just shifting the racks around, but also because they're not going above street level.
Right.
With their work, they're not, the structure isn't, I mean, it might a little bit but it's not another floor, it's not stories, it's street level improvements, so.
Can we add that in? as well.
Christina.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm kind of hearing through the deliberations about improving public safety through the
Right.
better site circulation, the inventory can expand by allowing this to be built, and that the impact is reduced because it does not go above street level. Kind of
Right.
3 additional
Right.
findings I'm hearing above and beyond.
Yes.
So as part of the revised findings of facts, is in a sense you are adopting what the staff recommended and then have additional findings.
Yep.
So if there are any other additional findings above and beyond what staff have, this is a good time in your deliberations and I can write them down.
Yeah, I think everybody agree with that?
But what I
Okay.
think you might want to do is just, you have paragraphs and just, your standard little 12 bullets.
Yeah.
Rather than, it doesn't go above street level. It doesn't significantly increase inventory. It doesn't, just
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. So that way, when KFC wants to expand and may become an A&W, they can, oh, well, you're doing this and that, you're violating these
Hey, that's
things.
a historic site right now.
So,
Yeah.
anyway.
I can do that.
Okay, so we're ready for the question? Okay, so on the motion, why don't we just go down the road? Bob?
I,
Aye.
Tom?
Aye,
Voting.
but again, is the expansion with the bullet points, with the
Yeah.
condition? Okay, yes, aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Staff will provide additional planning commission findings for approval at the next meeting.
Perfect. Okay,
Appreciate being good neighbors, because like I said, I drive by there, I live on 15th, and you guys have been really good about keeping the lanes clear, and hopefully we can finish paving 15th
just
and
have your
your cars
landscape people make sure they take care of those street trees along 14th. I've seen branches sitting there for weeks that broke or blew off, and nobody from your firm is, your maintenance
up.
people are picking them up or
We'll let them know.
keeping them clean and all of that.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
yeah, do something with that water down there, will you?
I'm working on it.
The water? Oh, in Ashland, yeah. They're actually in Medford, by the way. Their headquarters
Oh,
are
is
in
that
Medford.
right?
Yes, or they're not in Ashland.
Oh, you're off the hook
Founded
then.
in Ashland.
Yes, but they're not anymore. There's big, you drive on I-5 and there's a big Lithia Subaru thingy headquarters there.
I told Elaine to drink some of that on our honeymoon.
Oh,
when we
you
went
are
through.
really mean.
Oh, she filed the next day.
For divorce?
Yeah.
Yeah, she should have. Yeah, that stuff, I'm sorry.
It's pending.
It's nasty.
Can I ask a question in relation to this? Bob Mahoney once brought up the fact about all the boats that park on the street, and you once asked about, do all those have some conforming or some kind of
Oh,
a
you mean the
mark
place
for-
further down the road? that
Yeah, the
parks
one down the road where
boats,
the boats constantly are on the road. Remember you asked that at one of our meetings?
yes. Yeah, they move those boats around and they do cause
They
sometimes
sit
a
on the
hazard.
street.
Oh, yeah.
You brought that up.
Yeah,
I was wondering,
something-
So is that a non-conforming use of our public roads, or is that allowed, or?
I don't think that they're, I think that they're
Put them
a,
in the public right.
Code enforcement issue.
yeah, it's an
Exactly what
enforcement
the rules
issue.
are with.
If
I
they
have
want
no
to,
problem with it, but I sure see them there a lot.
they're a non-conforming use as well.
Yeah, if there were business boats being stored on the right-of-way, it would be a code enforcement issue, as opposed to if someone's has their boat and just need to pop in and
No,
grab
this is-
something while they're on the
They
river.
take that
Yeah.
little, whatever it is, that little cat
little
thing,
tractor, yeah.
tractor thing, and they're, yeah, it can be a hazard sometimes. Okay, we got a couple of minutes to
I want to
approve
say something.
about the boat place.
No, I don't.
Okay,
Tonight, guys, I want to thank you for I'm really proud to be associated with you guys.
as opposed to before you weren't?
But you know, we're asked to put together a comprehensive plan in a very imperfect situation. I mean, it's not an ideal planning process, or it is an ideal planning process because of the various laws that were required to keep us honest,
You know, we're
'cause-
not on number 5 yet.
Well, I know, but I want to go this way, but state law says I go that way. That keeps me honest and what have you.
Almost
But,
punched out.
you know, we get all these conflicting testimonies, and we get this deluge of emotion involved, and we still have to comply with our comprehensive plan and what have you. And it's a tough job, and I'm you know, I still wonder how we get through this in spite of ourselves, you know.
Okay, so we have 2 sets of minutes. We have the minutes of April 10th, 2017. Has everybody looked at those?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's yes. Okay. Minutes of April 10th, 2017. On the motion, just go down the row. Bob?
Aye.
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 Okay, approved. All right. Minutes of May 8th, 2017.
Move approval.
Do you guys remember back that far?
Sure.
I remember.
But I don't remember what I was doing.
You don't know what you were doing.
You were the new guy
No
then.
one's seconded, I'll second it.
Your name isn't actually even on here.
Fourth and
Okay, I'll be quiet then.
No, you are. Wait, there you are. There you are. You're
that was
last.
just- that
You were
was the
last.
First meeting.
Okay. All right, so the minutes of the May 8th, 2017 meeting has been moved and seconded. We'll start with Tom.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Abstain, and I vote aye. You were there.
I know, but I didn't read them.
Okay, all right, so we have the minutes have been approved. And last but not least, we have the letter that, the memo that we want to submit to the city commission. And I took some of Damon's comments, I made some more comments, and I will give these to Laura. Anybody have any other comments?
I don't know, I haven't seen the
This
list.
is she sent this to us in an email.
No,
This is-
you and I got it.
No, you and I did the edits, but on the city commission, planning commission, policy advisory regarding the mobility standards, we asked for a memo to be
Oh, I guess
drafted. You didn't see it?
I didn't.
Okay, well, I'll give her the revisions and we'll get them back out one more time.
Okay.
And I want to just say for the dumb record, so when you have the City of Oregon City right here, you don't need to put it there because it's already there. That'd be like, so you can just cross that out.
So we,
So.
sure,
planning-
make whatever changes you like.
Yeah, so it's just a thing, so it says Oregon City, and obviously we're the Planning Commission of Oregon City and City Commission of Oregon
In
City.
the letterhead, and then
Yeah.
it says from,
City of Oregon.
or to City of Oregon.
Drop the chocolate frosting off of it.
Oh, it says to the City of Oregon City.
State of
Ci-
Oregon.
It says to the City Commission of Oregon
Oregon City,
City.
yeah, but we've already,
City of Oregon
from
City,
Oregon
in the
City, which
state
is
of
right here in the
Oregon,
letterhead.
Which it says Oregon City on the headline.
And then I was just gonna add under policy advisory for mobility standards, just so it's real clear. It's just not a general policy advisory.
Well, it's not, because it's also about Holly Lane.
Yeah,
Yeah, feel free to redline it
Yeah.
and then give me your comments.
well, I did. I brought my red pen.
Perfect.
Well, it's about the mobility standards. And Holly Lane, okay.
Do we get to have a discussion?
Well, I'm gonna give them to her for the revision and have her send it back
No, I mean
out.
about something else.
We're under communications.
We're under
Go for it.
communication, so that's the only thing I had. So would you hand that over to her?
And then I'd like to ask
So I will make your red line changes and then send it out
for
to
the record.
Everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll
And
include
if you
it
have
in the
it, please take a
packet
look at it so then we can get, do we know when this is gonna be scheduled before city
That's what she
commission?
was about to say.
Wednesday. It's getting mailed out.
This Wednesday? Oh, okay,
So
so
it's a
that
week
means you
from
need to
Wednesday?
turn this around really quickly then. Okay, so this coming Wednesday, okay.
And so I need it Wednesday morning.
Yeah, and let me check my calendar for a moment, please. This Wednesday is the 11th. I'm just trying to see what I'm supposed to be doing that day. Okay, I would like permission to go present this. I apologize.
That would be on the 18th.
Yes,
That's
sorry.
the packets going out. on the
Yes,
11th.
the
Correct.
18th, yes. No, I don't have anything that night. The only reason I apologize, I should have attended the meeting where the discussion was regarding the lot averaging, and I was extremely disappointed to get a text that evening after I got back from an appointment that the city commission did not pay any attention to anything that we talked about. I was extremely disappointed.
And that's exactly what I wanted
The
to bring up.
public came and told us what the problem was, and it did not get addressed.
This is the second time lot averaging has come up. We made a decision. I almost wrote another article for the newspaper that I don't even feel like I'm doing any good sitting on this planning commission.
Oh, I
So
think we're doing good.
every time we do a decision, all it takes is somebody to go to the city commission, they don't follow. We spend weeks going over this with all the public, and then we submit
So what
that.
did they finally approve?
They didn't.
They only approved the provision to take out the
So they could
BPL
delete it.
So
power
actually,
line.
I can follow up on
They
that
ignored
one.
us again.
No, hold on.
They did.
One moment, I can explain. So we did have the city commission, we brought forward the package from the planning commission, and the city commission retained the language about excluding the power line easements. But they did take out the language regarding the limitation on the number of lots that can be below the average, and then removing, we had redlined the reduction from 20% to 10%, and that was removed as well. So some changes were retained. They made a tentative decision. They've not made a first reading or anything like
See,
that.
that
They'll also be on
It's a
the,
waste of my time.
they'll also be on the city commission agenda on the
But it
18th.
ignored what the public came and asked us to do. That's my concern about
There's
it.
7 of us,
They
there's 5 of
also-
them, and they don't
hold
follow us
on.
or listen to us.
Let Laura
I'm listening to
finish.
you, but one second. They also, so they did have a healthy discussion regarding lot averaging. A lot of these packages or code amendments did talk about lot averaging. And they decided to come back and visit it as a part of the equitable housing discussion that we're having, since the proposed changes would have an effect. So they did keep in mind the concerns of the Planning Commission and wanted to think about it within the context of equitable housing, since that would affect the number of lots. And so they wanted to have a more holistic discussion regarding lot averaging and that as well. So they didn't table it. They wanted to just have a more in-depth conversation about what its effects are.
So, are you done?
I am.
I'm going to say what I was going to say in my article, and I may still submit it to the Oregon City News. I am tired of sitting on a planning commission and having the city commission, most of them, that one time that they did it on the Wheeler Farms, some of them hadn't even read what we did. They didn't watch the video. They had no idea, and they just came in and voted without understanding all the work and effort that we put into this. We listened to the public, we debated amongst ourselves, and yet they don't even know what we talked about for the most part. They just go ahead, well, no, we don't want to do it. We're going to put it off for a while.
Tom, may I?
I'm sorry, I'm just
I know,
really
no,
fed up
don't
with it.
apologize, but may I suggest that you exercise some restraint at this point? It is my professional and personal advice.
I'm still saying the same thing we voted on the annexation 3 times, and here it is a 4th time. The city doesn't listen to the citizens.
Exercise restraint.
Okay, that's the
what I'm
restraint right
saying.
there. I'm just fed up.
Laura, what other fabulous communications we have besides the fact that you guys are packing and will be closed, so don't go up there and expecting coffee or cookies.
I'm going up there and I'm going to get my coffee and cookies.
Who's closed?
I will start with that
They
one.
will be.
We're moving.
Oh, yeah.
A week from tomorrow, actually. Where are we moving?
old EST
So
building.
we're moving to Mount Pleasant. It can be.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
No, we're moving to Mount Pleasant up on the hilltop. And so we thank you very much. We did a land use application, as you recall, for a zone change comp plan amendment, minor site plan design review. And with that, we got construction. There was an existing facility that the city had purchased and it had strong bones. And so we essentially did new roof and siding and some minor interior stuff.
So it's
And
April the 11th you're moving, or April 18th you're moving?
April 17th
17th.
through 19th, our office at 221 Malala Avenue will be closed. So Monday, the 16th, will be our last day at 221 Malala Avenue. From April 17th through the 19th, you can find us here at City Hall. We are doing a lot of measures to use what we have, and that includes using our existing office furniture. The result of that means that it takes a while to move, to deconstruct and reconstruct. So that means we're going to be here for 3 days. We will be at the same counter with our development services department, so you'll have all development together. We'll have limited office hours that week. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Friday, April 20th, we will be closed and we will be unpacking at our new facility during that time. During all of these days, we will still perform inspections as usual. It's just the counter hours that are slightly changed.
You should bring the cake for them.
On Monday, April 23rd, we will open up at our new location, which has the address of 698 Warner Parrott Road. And so we look forward to seeing you there. We hope to do an open house in May, probably before a planning commission meeting. So that's our move. The other thing is that ODOT is interested in learning about your thoughts for congestion pricing, which is when you travel during congested times, such as AM or PM peak, should it cost more? And what does that look like? And so they have they have a couple of different venues to get your thoughts on that. They have an open house that's online at http://openhouse.oregondot.org/congestion. And then they also are having an open house this Thursday at the Moot. They have a series of other open houses. This is just the first open house. So it's Thursday, April 12th from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Museum of the Oregon Territory, which is at 211 Tumwater Drive in Oregon City. So we hope that you can get out there and tell ODOT your comments, either online or in
5:30 to
person.
7:30?
5:30 to 7:30 at the Moot on Thursday, April 12th.
And they will get there early because they do have congestion parking there. Very constrained parking at
They're
Moot.
going to do what they want anyway, so.
Oh, I think, if we have a
People
chance to
don't listen to
go,
us.
we can go, tell them what we think.
Did you capture the day that
That's terrific.
history at their new facility?
All right, so we got a couple of things on our plate, so we're gonna talk about, Christina's gonna get us some additional information regarding the comment that Mr. Edgar made, and we're gonna get the memo reviewed, so that we can get it to the city commission, and I'm gonna schlep myself to the city commission meeting. Anybody else that wants to come and schlep, I would love if Bob came. Could you be my date, Bob?
Oh, yeah.
Could you be my
Right.
+1?
I'll be down to
18.
get you at 8:30.
Well, no, I'll drive myself, but will you meet me here?
Sure,
I'm serious.
sure.
Okay, so Bob and I have a date?
Okay.
Great, we'll see you
I
there.
forgot one other thing.
Yes, sir.
I've asked you pointedly that it would be good if all of us went and did a
Yes.
field trip out to that area like the mayors have done, the
Okay,
city
so could you
managers have
send
done.
us a survey monkey or a meeting monkey thingy and see when we might be able to do that
It's almost going to be dependent on the weather. 'cause
as a commission?
Once do we do that? Does that need to happen?
Yes, we'd have to announce it once we figure out when we can all go.
It's been pretty wet.
Yeah, well, we'll just wear our hip boots. You have some still from being on the farm, right? Some high waiter boots?
Yeah, but they're kind of
They're old.
dirty.
They're
Oh,
retired.
it's okay if they're dirty.
And they might have a hole in it here.
Oh, well, we don't want you to
and
get
there, a rip
wet.
and a tear.
Okay, we don't want you to get wet feet, because you know what happens when you get wet feet. That's
get
how
cold feet.
You get cold feet, and that's how you get sick.
So you get trench foot.
Yes, I've heard that.
Hey, the flu's coming back.
It better not be.
No,
You
it
better
is.
not be getting it.
It's coming
I
back.
already told you. You can't get sick again.
There's some guy out here.
All right, anything else, gentlemen?
I'm waiting for an answer.
I hear you. I will send out a
She's
doodle.
going to send us out a survey to see what date we can all do it.
I would just,
Okay, I didn't hear that.
I would just caution us going out on a site visit for one particular application. Are we doing this for every application or sort of where?
It depends.
This is the largest expansion of the
I'm just,
city.
we're not talking about the
I
specifics
know.
of the
If it's-
application. I'm just,
We're just going to, if we can make arrangements to do it, I think it's a good thing for us to do. We will announce it. I don't want to have all the developers there. I want it to be just us, but
it can't be
announced.
just us. It would be open to the
Well,
public. So I have
they
to
can-
arrange some
I know.
buses and stuff like that.
They
So
can
I
come.
have to look at my budget.
Let people drive out
Can't we
there.
just go in our own cars and meet you there?
Yeah, let me look into some logistics.
Okay, so send us a thing for a date so we can find out whether we can actually go.
Or a couple of days.
A couple of days. Send us,
We all meet there at the same place.
I can go.
what is it called? It's the meeting thing and you, huh?
Doodle.
Doodle, thank you, Bill, Doodle poll.
So, okay, so we're certain that do you want to do the site visit? It's just a matter of when, or we're uncertain if we
Yes.
want to do the site visit?
You really need to see that site.
Yes, let's go see it.
But you also.
I was just looking at all the planning, I hear you three, I just wanted to make sure that that's,
The question again?
do you want to do a site visit for your current application you're reviewing right now for the annexation?
If it works out.
If it works, that's a
Okay.
good answer.
Yes,
I'll
I
follow.
like that, yes.
Unless you guys make it out there, we're going to have
Did
to
you
do
guys
it.
I'm just making sure that I'm narrowing my doodle poll. Thank you very much.
You're narrowing your doodle poll, yes.
I have no idea until you see it.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, thank you for a
Planning Commission doesn't have.
very civilized public hearing. We didn't have anybody get crazy on us and all that, so we are
I
officially
just heard
adjourned.
I just heard
It's closed.